Thea in the DC Universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Ms. Shiva. It looked like the two were once again in a state of chess, but in reality, the situation was completely different from the beginning. Malcolm was currently unarmed and could only attack with his fists and feet, his least proficient form. Furthermore, he had been stabbed in the waist, which significantly affected his overall speed and strength. Although Thea had also been punched, half of her face was swollen, and blood was dripping down her chin, leaving a small pool on the ground. It looked miserable, but it was actually just oral bleeding, which had minimal impact on her fighting ability. Furthermore, with her longsword in hand, she had a good chance of defeating the unarmed Malcolm. Holding the sword in both hands, Thea raised it above her head and slowly approached Malcolm. This was the opening move of Italian swordsmanship, which emphasized the importance of remaining still and striking with a thunderous blow. Although the rule was to use a two-handed sword, a katana would also do the trick. Malcolm watched his daughter approach, his gaze fixed on her shoulder. If he were in better shape, he might have been able to block the blow with his bare hands. But now, a dull ache throbbed in his ribs. Though he used his muscles to partially close the wound, the blood continued to flow, staining his pants red. He decided to attack. But he couldn't rush in so recklessly. He used a trick, feinting a forward lunge. Sure enough, Thea fell for it, and slashed with a thunderous blow at her shoulder. Unexpectedly, Malcolm, after his forward charge, twisted his waist and stepped sideways, landing right beside Thea, striking her wrist with a powerful blow. The blade was already thrust, and there was no way back. Feeling the frustration of Malcolm's outdated tactics, Thea dropped her blade and turned to defend against the incoming punch. But to prevent her weapon from being exploited by Malcolm, she finally exerted a little force and flung the blade out of their circle. Then the two began to fight. Kung Fu had always been the focus of her training. They could always maintain an undefeated record in their daily fights, let alone now. Using one's strengths to attack the enemy's weaknesses, this was her original plan, and now she has fully achieved the expected goal. As for saying it was just daily training, why not have a fair fight between knights? Thea could only say sorry, I am a woman, I can't be a knight. There's only one Altria. That is definitely not her. With Thea's full outbreak, Malcolm could only barely resist. The wound under his ribs could no longer be held because of the force just now. The blood flowed out desperately. He knew he was going to lose. If this was a life and death fight, he might be able to fight to the death, but there was no need to do so now. He stepped out of the circle, gestured to stop, and said hoarsely, "Very good. I've taught you everything I can. I hope you won't let your talent go to waste. You can go now, and don't come to me again." Thea looked at his wounds and knew they were only superficial. With the many ancient secrets he'd stolen from the ninja masters, he could easily recover with a few prescriptions. At the same time, she sighed. Has this beginner class finally graduated? With a slight bow, she said, "Thank you for your continued guidance. I'll always remember these past 100 days." "Thank you." With that, she grabbed her weapon and walked out of the dense forest. What about those three idiots on the ground? I'm lucky I didn't kill them. Do they expect me to call a doctor? Master Batman always beats people half to death and leaves them hanging at the police station door. When has he ever called a doctor? According to the universal values here, life or death is their fate. Malcolm's once straight body bent slightly as he watched his daughter retreat. This unfilial daughter. It hurts so much. He took off his coat, and carelessly wrapped it around his waist twice, then had to go back and deal with it. At the same time, he whispered to the dark forest, "Madam, what do you think of the disciple I taught? It should meet your requirements. Are you interested in my proposal?" After being stunned for half a minute, the surroundings were quiet, and the unknown birds on the trees were looking at him from afar. Malcolm realized that he had embarrassed himself. Damn it, he left without telling me. I hate these people who suppress my perception the most. Not to mention Malcolm, who went home alone to recuperate. Shia was also rubbing her cheeks at this time, criticizing her father. This punch was too hard. She didn't know if it would affect her beautiful face. She hit people in the face, let alone the face of a beautiful woman like herself. This old guy deserves to be a bachelor for life. She was also thrilled by the passion that boiled during the battle. Her father's words might have been harsh, but she was truly a natural warrior. Even after the battle, she'd still been immersed in that state. Even without an instrument to measure it, she could sense that her blood flow was now 20% faster than usual. Just as she was about to slow her heart rate back to normal, she felt something strange. She drew her sword and gazed behind her. "Who's there? Come out." "Very perceptive indeed," the person said, speaking in a strange tone, like a foreigner. Of course, that meant someone outside the United States. As the person gradually emerged from the shadows, Thea realized it was a woman. The woman, cloaked in the shade of the trees, had long, lustrous, raven black hair that fell to her waist. Her eyes were bright and gleaming. She wore a long black trench coat and dark leather pants, and her gaze glared at her like a sharp sword. Thea, who thought she knew the plot, was a bit stunned. Who is this? Judging by her impressive aura, she was definitely not an unknown figure. She was in a bad state right now, and she couldn't fight her anymore. With a hint of caution, she asked, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "You can call me Shiva, or Ms. Shiva. I was originally asked to teach you more fighting skills, but after watching your fight just now, I saw that you were able to hold your opponent to a draw despite being inferior in strength, experience, and skill. I admire you. Will you be my disciple?" the mysterious woman said in a strange foreign accent. "Ms. Shiva? What village did this person come from?" Thea was certain it wasn't someone from Arrow and the Lightning. Just looking at this person's aura, like looking at a sword, she knew they were capable fighters. But they didn't look like superpowers. Could they be from Gotham? He said he was asked, so it was easy to guess. It couldn't be anyone other than Old Ma. It couldn't be Felicity who asked her to do it, right? Should she accept? This woman evokes the feeling of ice, coldness, and doom. None of these words are synonymous with helping others. This person is definitely not a righteous hero. Was he going to be taught by a villain? Thinking about it, it wasn't a big deal. Lao Ma was also a villain, and he taught me pretty well, wasn't he? But some questions still needed to be asked clearly. What are you going to teach me? You have a good foundation. I want to further teach you the essence of fighting and train your perception, Ms. Shiva said calmly. I wonder if Lao Ma's blood pressure would rise when he heard this. The teachings he gave me with all his heart are just the basics in your eyes? Are you more powerful? Xia was a little interested in this woman. Chapter 27 Tommy's Chance. Xia thought carefully. She had nothing to lose, so she might as well learn from her for a while. Besides, a female teacher was always more convenient. While the Jianghu people were known for their informality, many of the fighting techniques she had previously practiced with her father were too awkward. She nodded confidently. Yes, Mom, I'd like to learn from you. Very good. Meet me at this address tomorrow morning. I'll give you this bottle of medicine, too. It'll go down quickly. Ms. Shiva looked a little strange. She handed Xia a piece of paper and a bottle of medicine, and then vanished with a whoosh. The only thing that lingered in Xia's mind was the words, "It'll go down quickly, my face is swollen." She touched it. Ouch, it hurt. But the touch of her hand confirmed it was a large swelling. My image was completely ruined. Her confident tone just now, coupled with her image, was truly foolish. She couldn't go home in this state. Moira would be driven mad with anxiety if she saw her. She found a quiet place, poured out the ointment, and rubbed it on her face, hoping the swelling would go away. After waiting for 10 minutes, she realized she was overthinking it. There might be a miracle cure, but it definitely wasn't the one in her hand. Her face was still burning. It looked like she'd have to stay at Felicity's for the night. She just hoped her curiosity wouldn't be too strong. But how could that be possible? Wow, Thea, what's wrong with you? Did you run into a bad guy? Do you want to take some medicine? What if you're pregnant? Felicity, as warm-hearted as ever, saw Thea, dusty and ragged, with a large swelling on her face. She immediately imagined a multitude of scenarios, and tears welled up in her eyes. At first, Thea felt warmed by her friend's concern, but the more she listened, the more she felt something was amiss. Why would she take medicine when she was perfectly fine? What's wrong with me? After finally figuring it out, she slapped her forehead in anger. What are you imagining? I fell while practicing. Thea and Felicity had discussed martial arts training. After all, they were now a team. She knew she was a hacker, and she knew she was learning martial arts, so both sides felt at ease. Although her tone was sincere and her expression touching, a master's degree from MIT wasn't so easily fooled. You fell, Felicity shook her head slightly. She pulled out her tablet, hacked something into it, and pulled up a bunch of images, pointing at them. This, and this, that's what you'd fall for. You'd obviously be hit. Knowing she couldn't fool him, Thea could only tell the truth. I lost control during sparring. It's just a minor injury. My teacher also took a stab from me. How dangerous? Felicity muttered. Thea grumbled inwardly. That's nothing. Didn't you see Yao Fei training Oliver? Uncle Yao shot an arrow at them, leaving him a transparent hole from back to front. And when Oliver trains Roy and Barry in the future, he'll be no slouch either. Take my arrow first. Dad's training method was much gentler than his. The two had previously discussed defense strategies for the unexpected. For a female heiress to a large corporation like Thea, strengthening herself was always more important than wielding high-tech weaponry. Women were perceived as weak and vulnerable, making them prime targets for robbers, bandits, heretics, and other villains in the DC universe. If Thea frequently appeared in public, turning herself into a weapon was her only option. Wearing an evening gown with a pistol strapped to her thigh was an anime trope. No one dressed that way in real life. A short skirt wouldn't cover it, and a long one would be difficult to hold. Watching Felicity care for herself like a gentle sister, she surprisingly had some experience in treating injuries. Gently applying ointment to each swollen area of her face, Thea felt her skill was far superior to her own in the woods, and she felt lucky. Honestly, are you serious? But as soon as she spoke, Thea felt her gentle sister vanish into the distance, and the unscrupulous woman returned. You idiot. I'm incredibly skilled. I can beat 100 of you. I don't believe you. Let me check. Ouch, don't touch me. Malcolm stumbled back home, clutching his old waist. He applied some medicine prepared by a ninja master. The master had lived for over 800 years, mastering not only martial arts but also nearly every other profession. Judging by his knowledge, he could hold at least 50 doctorates. In the original story, Yao Fei's herbs, capable of curing 100 poisons and illnesses, were cultivated from a ninja master. The medicine Malcolm was applying was one he had personally prepared according to an ancient recipe. He applied the medicine and rebandaged the wound, feeling a bit amused by the night's encounter. He had intended to engage in a fight to keep her motivated, but it ended up bloodied. He was still proud, feeling his daughter's relentless attack was a sign of his style. He hadn't realized that Thea's face was swollen and she was about to stab him, hence the illusion. He accidentally glanced at the table and found an extra note. I agree to your request. Remember to transfer the money as agreed. There was no signature. Malcolm sneered and tore up the note. This woman who is obsessed with money, with her amazing martial arts, had become a slave to money. It was ridiculous. But when he thought about how she could approach him silently, her strength was really unfathomable. Since Thea had her to teach her, he felt relieved. His daughter's affairs could come to an end. With her current wisdom in martial arts, there were people who could bully her, but they were not many. Shouldn't he pay more attention to his son? He felt very depressed when he thought that Tommy didn't know about Thea. What if Tommy knew that he had cheated during his marriage? How would his son look at him? He would definitely despise him even more. If he told the truth, the relationship between father and son might be completely broken. Alice, he couldn't say it. During training, he also understood Thea's thoughts. His daughter was learning martial arts to prepare for emergencies. Although Malcolm controlled Star City's underground forces, he didn't implement military-style management. There were always idiots, but this year there were even more. What if, one day, someone looking for a sudden fortune popped up? While his young and beautiful daughter was a natural choice, there was no guarantee his son wouldn't be targeted. It would be a complete joke if a gangster's son was kidnapped by unsuspecting gang members. Gazing at the black bows and arrows hanging on the wall, he thought he should give his son a chance. He checked the surveillance cameras and saw that his luck had improved since his daughter's stab wound. Tommy staggered in and immediately ordered the housekeeper to call him over. Old man, what's wrong with you? Are you going to restore my bank account? Tommy, unsure of what was going on, thought he'd been doing well lately and could finally get back to his former glory. His heart was pounding. As my only heir, don't you think it's dangerous for you to be in the ghetto with Laurel every day? Malcolm always felt that he and his son were not on the same page. He had originally planned to talk it out, but his tone was a bit unfriendly from the beginning. Tommy was also depressed when he heard this. I'm in danger? I'm a poor man who takes the bus every day. Who would be so blind to arrest me? Oh, this made so much sense. Malcolm didn't know what to say. In order to ease the situation, he had to take a step back. I will resume your expenses tomorrow. Can you listen to me carefully? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Father and Son. Tommy had been having a rough time lately, riding the bus and squeezing through the subway. Money was tight, and he couldn't even go out with his old friends, so he'd just call and pretend to be sick. He immediately perked up when he heard he'd get his allowance back. He even poured his father a glass of water, a gesture he'd never seen before, and sat down, implying that he was finally able to speak. Seeing his son beaming at him, Malcolm instantly understood his intentions. He calmed himself down and whispered, "What would you do if you were kidnapped? Have you ever thought about that? What about your bodyguards? You don't owe them their salaries, do you?" Tommy was puzzled by the question. What a difference. Malcolm thought to himself that even though Thea was overthinking things, and even seemed a bit paranoid in his eyes, it was always better to be cautious. I can beat 10 of your so-called bodyguards, he thought. But he couldn't say that just yet. If you were with Laurel, you wouldn't want bodyguards following you around the clock, would you? Of course. Who wouldn't enjoy having bodyguards watching them while they did their favorite exercise? Tommy lowered his head and thought for a moment. He wasn't stupid, but rather clever. He knew his father's words were more than just a clue. He bit his lip and asked, "What do you mean? You need the ability to protect yourself, anytime, anywhere. You want me to carry a weapon?" Tommy thought he understood what his father meant. "No, you need training." Malcolm shook his head solemnly. Haha, Tommy laughed, then realized Malcolm's sullen expression didn't seem joking, and his expression turned serious. "You're serious? You want me to get some combat training? Special Forces style?" Malcolm didn't answer his question. Previously, it was mainly because they hadn't communicated enough. Today, with just a few words, he had analyzed his son's current state of mind and understood his weaknesses, making things easier. "You also want to protect Laurel when a crisis strikes, right?" Tommy nodded immediately. That was nonsense. What man didn't want to protect his woman? "You don't have to go to the group tomorrow. I can train you to give you the strength to protect your woman." Malcolm had been hanging out with Thea for over 6 months, having heard many of her casual complaints, and he had a certain understanding of the protective desire of so-called heroes. Tommy's initial excitement at the first sentence, knowing he wouldn't have to suffer at the hands of the group, filled him with joy. The second and third sentences, heard together, filled him with a sense of purpose. He must protect Laurel. It took a few seconds for the second sentence to register. "You want to train me? You're capable of that." Tommy squinted at his father. "Aren't you a businessman?" He looked around and saw he was just an ordinary guy. Malcolm, with his considerable teaching experience, knew he couldn't afford to waste time on him. He copied his instructional method with Thea, pulled out a bag of tennis balls, and handed it to Tommy. "Throw it up, I'll do the rest." However, the first lesson went poorly. Tommy hadn't thought about it, still thinking about his father's martial arts skills. Throwing the tennis balls was fine, but he threw the entire bag. Looking at the flying tennis balls, I was stunned. Old Ma was devastated and could only continue to order, "Pick them up. Throw them one by one," as expected. The proper instruction began. Tommy was stunned by Old Ma's superb shooting skills, but when Old Ma asked if he wanted to learn, Tommy asked the same question Oliver had wanted to ask but hadn't dared to ask on the deserted island a while ago: why not use a pistol? Malcolm now understood Yao Fei's feelings. Why is he so stubborn? "Look, our daughter doesn't have so much nonsense." He wanted to say that a pistol would not work on him, but he was not Thea. His personal perception was really poor, and at his age, a pistol could still cause him harm at close range. He could only quote the ninja master's words, "Pistols are tools for the weak." He regretted saying that right after he said it. He might as well have left it at that. Tommy's expression told him he didn't understand what he meant. He could only explain sheepishly, "With my training, you'll be able to effectively dodge bullets, or evade them the moment the gunman raises his weapon." Tommy, half comprehending, asked, "Can you do that?" Malcolm was left with nothing to say. He could only bite the bullet and say, yes, he could do it. Meanwhile, he wondered, what if he asked to give it a try? What would he do? Would he have to claim he was injured and couldn't perform at his usual level? Luckily, Tommy, though a little curious, wasn't so heartless as to let his dad test the gun. He nodded. All right, I'll trust you for now. How do we train? Where do we train? Malcolm thought about it and decided to keep things as they were. It looked like the Grove classes couldn't stop just yet. He'd return to teaching and teach another class. Although there was only one student each time, seeing that it was still early, he dragged Tommy into the dense forest. The place was the same, the smells were the same, but the people weren't exactly the same. Malcolm, who considered himself somewhat experienced in teaching, then repeated the same method he'd used with Thea. 5 minutes later, he regretted his decision. Tommy's intelligence was fine, his mind was sharp, but his physical abilities were truly worrisome. To put it bluntly, he had no talent at all, just an average guy. His talent was practically non-existent, and coupled with years of devotion to the nightclub scene, his perception, not to mention his physical dullness, was profound. If Malcolm's abilities were the center point, Thea would be the first 10 miles ahead, Tommy the last 10. They were both his children, so how could their abilities differ so much? All night, Malcolm accompanied Tommy, concentrating on shooting at a 10-meter target in front of them. If he remembered correctly, Thea had hit the target with one shot and moved on to the next course. His own training in Nandarbit took 3 days, but he was already middle-aged by then, while Tommy was only 20. Fortunately, Tommy had a tenacious nature. He would do his best even when he couldn't do something. This, in turn, helped Malcolm gain a better understanding of his son. As their teaching progressed, their relationship warmed slightly, and Tommy no longer rejected him as much. Malcolm sat on the ground and quietly unwound the bandage under his ribs. He began bleeding again. Just then, Tommy turned around to say something, but was shocked to see his father's abdomen covered in blood. "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Seeing his son's concern for him, Malcolm felt a blow was worth it. But he couldn't tell Tommy that it was his sister who stabbed him, as that would have been a never-ending explanation. Thinking quickly, he made up a lie. "There's been a rise in an underground faction in Star City lately, and I went to investigate them, so I got injured." Tommy had no idea that his father was actually the underground faction. He just thought that his father's sudden request for martial arts training tonight made perfect sense. He was secretly investigating something, got discovered, and was afraid of getting himself into trouble, so he practiced alone. It turned out that his father was an unsung hero. He then said solemnly, "Don't worry, I will be careful, and I will definitely find the murderer who hurt you." Chapter 29. Promoted to junior high school? At this point, Thea still didn't know that Malcolm's classroom was reopening, and that her father had lied to her about his injury. She walked steadily down the mountain path. The beautiful woman with long, dark hair was a real expert at finding a place. This place was even more secluded than the grove they'd been in before. It was a good thing Thea had gotten up an hour earlier, otherwise she would have been late. She surveyed the surroundings. The vegetation was lush, and the sound of flowing water could be heard in the distance. The place could be described as truly picturesque. Finding this place near Star City, a heavily industrialized city once plagued by the Quinn family's steel operations, must have taken some effort. Compared to Old Mazdark Grove, this place was much more pleasant. Had she passed the entrance exam and entered the new classroom? Could this be the legendary transition from elementary school to junior high school? Maximizing her perception, she quickly spotted the woman standing not far away, her back to Thea. Ms. Shiva's hands were clasped behind her, her waist-length black hair swirling like clouds in the valley breeze. For a moment, Thea, a fellow woman, was mesmerized. But she was immediately startled awake as Ms. Shiva, with impressive grace, recited a poem in Chinese with a strange accent. The sun sets behind the mountains. With a click, Xia almost fell. In such a beautiful setting, she should have recited something like "Smoke locks the pond and willows," but why did she recite a poem even elementary school students could understand? "Your cool, elegant demeanor, with long flowing hair, is ruined, you know." With drooping eyes, she casually replied in Chinese, "The Yellow River flows into the sea." "Oh, little Xia, I didn't expect you to know Chinese." "That's amazing." Ms. Shiva, surprised by her Chinese, looked as friendly as a wanderer who had returned home after years away. Xia resisted the urge to give her a tongue twister and nodded solemnly, meaning, "Let's stop with this small talk and get down to business." Ms. Shiva was pleased with her expression. She was neither arrogant nor impetuous, unfazed by praise or criticism. She was a very interesting girl. Since you are studying with me, we are destined to be together. You know my name and you look fluent in Chinese. That's great. I am Chinese and my Chinese name is Sandra Wu Shan. Siva is the nickname given to me by Indians, the black-haired lady introduced herself calmly. But what she said shocked Xia. What kind of Chinese name is that? Call the police in your place of residence. You were so irresponsible when registering. Withhold your bonus for that month. Xia decided to ignore this so-called Chinese name and call her Ms. Siva from now on. It is catchy and easy to remember. It is similar to her own name and both are from the Xi generation. Ms. Shiva was unaware of the complaints in her heart, and said at a normal speed, I saw your fight last night. I have to say that you have a lot of fighting wisdom to be able to defeat the strong with the weak, but it is far from enough. You have not brought out all of your own advantages. Do you know where your strengths are? Xia would definitely not have been able to answer this question half a year ago, but now she is still aware of her abnormalities. My perception? But I feel that I have done my best. Please teach me, teacher. Very good. You can recognize your own strengths and weaknesses. You have surpassed 90% of the people in the world. I admire you more and more. As he said that, he gave Xia a smile, but the smile looked cold no matter how you looked at it. Perception, Black Arrow should have told you about it. I'm repeating it from my own experience, everyone has it, to varying degrees. Animals in nature can sense earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, relying on their early warnings. But humans, living in this chaotic environment, have experienced varying degrees of deterioration in their perception. Only by returning to nature can we rediscover this gift. Xia nodded. Lao Ma had said something similar, but perhaps he was just repeating the ninja master's words to her. He focused more on returning to oneself, while Shiva emphasized returning to nature. This might be the fundamental difference between the two martial arts masters. Different paths lead to the same destination, and neither is entirely correct. But compared to the ninja master's talk of seeking breakthroughs through combat, Ms. Shiva's words undoubtedly fit her better. Today's class won't cover actual combat. I hope you can take the first step toward returning to nature, feel nature. Come and stand by me. Xia obediently took her place. Her first impression was the strong wind. She wondered if she would be blown into the valley, even though she weighed just 100 pounds. Close your eyes and listen carefully to the sound of the wind. Ms. Shiva wrapped her eyes with a strip of cloth. The sound of the wind? Once a person loses their sight, they immediately fall into confusion. It took Xia a while to realize that the training had begun. She listened intently for a moment. South wind, about level 3, with a maximum speed of level 4. Anything else? There were some birds singing, but I couldn't tell which birds they were. Not bad, you're indeed quite gifted. I've divided the training of your perception into 4 stages. Stage 1, listening to the wind. Stage 2, birds singing. Now we're entering stage 3, insects chirping. Now sit down and take off your clothes. What did that mean? Why take off clothes? Was this some kind of evil practice? Xia's mind automatically flashed to the scene of Yang Guo and Xia Longyu practicing in the flowers. Wasn't Yin's hyping going to jump out soon? Don't be dazed. Take it off quickly, Shiva urged, unaware of the conflict she was having. It doesn't matter if she dies, she's a woman after all. Take it off. Shakily, she took off her coat. Why are you so shy? Are you a European or American, more conservative than Asians? Seeing her hands shaking like she had Parkinson's disease, Siva grew curious. You're being prejudiced. What's wrong with Europeans or Americans? It's a personality issue, Xia, who had been silent with her eyes closed, couldn't help but retort. Even Asians have their own uninhibited styles, especially those fallen girls from the Foot Basin country. There's even body writing, it has nothing to do with region. Ms. Siva's usually icy face was amused by her expression. Okay, personality issue. Hey, I didn't ask you to take off your underwear, did I? What? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Xia quickly put her underwear back on. This woman looked serious, but she was actually a ruthless woman. At this moment, Xia missed her father's classroom in the woods. Although it was dark, the heart was bright. Although it was full of birdsong and flowers, sincerity could easily lead astray. This unexpected incident completely destroyed the serious atmosphere between the two, and instead, a touch of intimacy emerged. Ms. Shiva didn't stand there any longer, finding a tree stump to sit on and watch from afar. It was freezing cold. She took off her coat and covered her eyes. A gentle breeze blew, and the chill on her skin immediately washed away her mental perception. Her brain was filled with cold signals, and she could no longer hear the chirping of insects or birds. Chapter 30, Sparring. Although her body was freezing, her mind was becoming increasingly clear. Even a low IQ figure would understand the purpose of this training. She usually thought her perception was well trained, and today, under external stimulation, it showed its true form. Will the next time she's in a fight, if there's external interference, the same thing will happen? She still hasn't mastered the basics well enough. Understanding the purpose of this training, Thea adjusted her attitude. After all, they were all women, and a bit of flesh wouldn't be spared after a few glances. She might as well just treat it as a beach. She tried hard to ignore the cool breeze on her skin, concentrating on exploring her surroundings. Whether numb from the cold or perhaps due to her own progress, she vaguely felt the surroundings quiet down, and the previously intermittent bird calls became clearer. After an indeterminate amount of time, she heard Ms. Shiva's voice say, "Catch it." A gust of wind rustled in, and Thea, gazing at the direction, grabbed it. It seemed to be a wooden stick. "Come, let's see how much you understand. Attack me." Thea had already grasped the basics of this unconventional training method. Fearing the state of mind she maintained would fade, she didn't dare remove her blindfold. She closed her eyes, blocking out the surrounding noise, and tried to sense her position. She slowly approached, and when she felt she was only 3 steps away, she suddenly struck with a powerful blow. As expected, Ms. Shiva blocked the blow and struck her on the left shoulder with a backhand. "Not bad, you could be faster. There's still a gap on the left. Attack again." Snap. "Your right hand was too high." Attack again. Snap. "Faster steps." Attack again. This woman was so violent. Thea was filled with hatred. She felt like she had never taken so much beating in her life. The elation she felt when she had fought Malcolm to a draw was instantly gone. But she persevered, determined to achieve self-improvement, and constantly adjusted her attacking stance. After being beaten for who knows how long, Ms. Shiva's voice rang out like heaven. "That's all for today. Take off the blindfold. I'll apply some medicine." Leaning on a stick, she slowly pulled the blindfold off, feeling like she had returned from hell. Suddenly, she saw the light again, and everything around her was so beautiful. Those blind swordsmen in animated films all appeared so powerful, their poses so cool and impressive, but they were all fake. Massage is the only way out for the blind. Why would they practice swordplay when they were perfectly fine? She touched her body. The bruises were numb, and she didn't feel cold. She felt pain everywhere. There was no place that didn't hurt. This transition class was much harder than the previous one. To get ahead, what else could she do? She had to persevere. "Sit still. I'll apply some medicine." Just as she was lost in thought, she saw Ms. Shiva pour some medicine from a bottle into her hands, rub them together, and start to apply it to her shoulders. "What are you doing?" Shia didn't know why she was so nervous, but she felt she should stop her. "I'm applying the ointment to you. You can't get it to many places yourself. Stop talking nonsense and behave." Shiva didn't know why the little girl was always so shy. He just thought it was embarrassing because they were not familiar with each other, so he didn't care. Numb and burning, Shia felt that her hands were like magic, constantly moving around her body, as if millions of ants were swarming through her blood vessels and bones. She would be lying if she said it was uncomfortable, but she felt really embarrassed. She suppressed a comfort in her heart, afraid to cry out, and her face flushed red. After applying the ointment all over her body and patting it again, Shia was already sweating profusely. She didn't know if this was part of the original tutorial or the result of her own random thoughts, but her skin's sensitivity to the environment had greatly increased, a bit like a cicada sensing the coming of autumn. "You've made much faster progress than I expected. Forget about practicing your perception today. Come fight with me." After massaging her for a while, Ms. Shiva felt a bit warmed up. Feeling that her teaching mission for the day was nearly complete, she decided to see how much Thea's combat skills had improved. She was happy to do it. While the chances were slim, she still felt a chance of revenge for the beating she'd just received. With her body aflame, she didn't even bother putting on her coat. She grabbed her stick and charged forward. The two women quickly and fiercely stood up. A surge of unbridled fire surged within Thea, feeling a surge of strength. Drawing on that profound feeling, she unleashed her previously awkward moves one by one, instantly sending the unprepared Ms. Shiva reeling. "That's awesome. Thea Quinn, you're worthy of being my opponent." Ms. Shiva flinched, leaping out of the circle and shedding her trench coat, revealing a tight red tank top underneath. Her arms bulged with streamlined muscles, and her flat stomach revealed a graceful mermaid line. When Lady Shiva got serious, she proved worthy of her title as the world's greatest assassin or martial artist. Thea's initial impulsive, aggressive attack was quickly defeated by Lady Shiva's masterful martial arts and skillful technique. Despite her constant ingenuity, seeking counterattacks, she quickly employed 3 sword techniques and 2 staff techniques, but each was easily defeated by Lady Shiva. "Let's fight unarmed." Thea flung her staff far away. She had little experience in weapon combat, so to vent her anger, she decided to fight unarmed. Fearing she wouldn't cooperate, she flung her own weapon out in advance, figuring her pride would fool her. As she suspected, Lady Shiva threw her weapon, but 10 seconds later, Thea was regretting it so much that she wanted to throw her head against the wall. They could still trade blows for a few rounds in weapon combat, but unarmed combat was a completely different story. Her barehanded skills were far more powerful. Despite Thea's desperate efforts, determined not to lose, or lose badly, the massive disparity in strength still kept her pinned to the ground. Ms. Shiva's fists swiftly flew before her eyes, a shower of blows. Clearly, she was showing some mercy. If only those punches had landed on her face, she could have gone to Korea for plastic surgery. But why did this scene so closely resemble a martial artist beating up a Japanese soldier? Lying sprawled, she felt like the soldier being beaten. Thea blurted out, "Wing Chun, little Thea, you have good taste. Do you want to learn?" Ms. Shiva had returned to her usual self from her combat mode. While her tone was still a bit cold, she was no longer as distant as she had been at first, and instead held a hint of teasing. Does this world even have Wing Chun? On second thought, it seemed so. Oliver had once pounded a wooden dummy, his blows resounding with clatter. Why not? In a world without internal energy or Qigong, finding a martial art that suits you is crucial. Chapter 31: The beginning of police-citizen cooperation. Despite her eagerness to learn Wing Chun, Thea didn't have time to learn it today. Even though Thea was working independently now, being unduly late was a bad idea. "Master Shiva, can I call you sister? I always feel like calling you master makes you sound older." Their fight had grown closer. She hadn't noticed before, but now, with some free time, she admired her graceful curves and perfectly proportioned figure. This beauty, unlike that of a muscular man, was something Thea envied. Shiva was aware of her deliberate attempts to get close, but she didn't resent it. "Whatever, it's just a name, sister. Can I ever achieve abs like yours?" Thea asked, her fingers gently brushing across her smooth belly. It was firm, soft, and powerful. So beautiful, the touch stirred a tinge of strangeness in Ms. Shiva's heart, but she quickly suppressed it. "Take your time, little girl." She put on her coat and the two of them slowly walked out of the valley, agreeing to continue tomorrow. Thea turned 16 last month and successfully obtained her driver's license. She hadn't decided on a car yet, so she just randomly picked up a Ford from the group. On the way back to base camp, Thea was overwhelmed by the cacophony of noise. No wonder Ms. Shiva always retreated to the mountains and forests. The city's chaotic clamor truly affected her perception, and the more sensitive her senses, the greater the impact. Was she going to develop decibel filtering earmuffs someday? Slowly driving back to the former factory, now the software department, she spotted a red figure waving from afar. "Hey, Thea, come here." "What's up, Felicity?" "Good news. The facial recognition software is finally done." She'd been frustrated the past few days. Software development and upgrades were exciting, but rewriting from a higher version to a lower one was tedious. So, having this software finished, so she could continue working on the brainwave acquisition program, was truly great news for Felicity. "It's good news for you, but not for me. Besides, I'm tired and hungry. Bring me a big Bailey's burger, and I'll take care of the rest after I wake up." After completing the software, there was still work to do, including coordinating with the police, contacting the media, and arranging the venue. It was too much. Thea felt a little dizzy, seeing everyone twice. She dismissed Felicity with a few words, closed the office door, and fell asleep on the guest sofa. She slept soundly. It was like the spring breeze in the thatched cottage. The sun was setting outside, and while others were busy, she could hide away and sleep. It was a blissful experience. Seeing that it was almost noon, she ate a few bites of the burger with plain water. She didn't dare drink the Coke for now, hoping to get those perfect abs soon. She grabbed Felicity and headed straight to the police station. Why at lunchtime? Thea had precisely timed their meal so she could get them to engage in some corruption and bond. This was all advanced experience from her past life. Arriving at the police station, Detective Lance was waiting for his lunch. "Don't wait any longer, old man," she said. "Every single officer in the police station has been corrupted by Thea. They'll have plenty of food and drinks, all paid for by the Quinn group anyway." She didn't care if the alcohol would affect the afternoon's work. During the meal, Thea proposed establishing a special security fund for active police officers, with each officer receiving a monthly stipend based on their length of service. Society currently focuses on the fallen officers, overlooking the importance of the living. Facts have proven that while American police have many flaws, gang ties and racial discrimination, the prevalence of guns creates immense pressure on their jobs. It's no coincidence that they happily go to work in the morning and return with a small box in the evening. Many police officers who persevere are driven by a strong sense of justice, especially in a world plagued by villainous aliens, making their job the most dangerous. Many citizens don't understand the dangers of such a dangerous job, believing the police are incompetent, leading to the city's chaos. Some decide to take action to combat this evil, but as their bodies strengthen and transform, others lose sight of their original aspirations, drifting from one extreme to another. This vicious cycle naturally deepens the city's darkness. Detective Lance, in his 20 years of service, has witnessed countless cases of young individuals determined to fight crime only to become involved due to various circumstances, but his limited influence has left him without a solution. Regardless of Thea's motivations, she's been able to truly transform the police force, which deeply touched him. Both sides are satisfied. While not completely slavish, it seems Thea wouldn't be caught for a speeding violation in Star City. Back at the police station, Felicity and the department's technical staff worked together to install facial recognition software. Using a cross-reference algorithm, they located the two long-elusive fugitives in less than 10 minutes. Despite their altered appearances, their facial features and body movements were still accurately tracked by the computer. The two criminals' unsuspecting capture sent shockwaves through the police station. Normally, such fugitives would require a 10-day, half-month search to apprehend. The usually elusive lieutenant suddenly appeared from nowhere and praised the Quinn group's move, calling it yet another strong demonstration of police community cooperation. He stated that he would notify senior police officials to attend the signing ceremony, and that the Quinn group would be the one to notify the media. After the two left the station, Thea asked Felicity if she knew anyone in the media. Felicity explained that she was a hacker and had hacked into their computers, altering speeches and blacking out screens during live broadcasts, things she'd done before, but she'd never personally seen anyone do it. Hearing that Thea was meeting with some media professionals, even though they didn't know her, she sheepishly said, "Go on your own," and then she scurried off. Abandoned by her unscrupulous comrades, Thea was left to fend for herself. While it would have been convenient to ask for help from Moira or Old Ma, she felt the situation was minor and using their connections was like overkill. Flipping through her phone book, Thea lamented how few people she knew, the same handful who kept coming and going. Though reluctant, she had no choice but to ask Tommy for help. Unsure whether Old Ma had revealed the truth, Thea couldn't quite place herself in Tommy, whether to maintain their existing relationship as friends or as siblings. Furthermore, she wondered whether her illegitimate status would affect Tommy, the legitimate son. Tommy, who usually arrived immediately upon receiving a call, waited an entire hour this time. Just as Thea wondered if he'd learned the truth and broken up with her, Tommy, wearing sunglasses and leaning on a cane, approached her like Daredevil. Chapter 32 Malcolm's Dilemma. The usually cheerful Tommy looked like a frost-bitten eggplant, listless and barely able to say hello. "Hey, Thea, you must be waiting impatiently." Looking at the man in sunglasses and leaning on a cane, it was hard to believe this was the same Tommy who used to be so energetic. "Hey, man, what have you been doing? Are you cosplaying Daredevil? You must have walked into the wrong set. Not to mention your faces are quite similar, both have long faces." Thea remembered Tommy being so energetic when she met Laurel a few days ago. How could he look like this after just 3 days? The original plot had undergone a major change. He was blind? Her little butterfly shouldn't have affected him that much? Thea stared at his sunglasses for a long time, unable to decide whether to stand up and help him sit down. She could only hesitantly ask, "Your eye?" "Oh, it's okay. It's just a bump, Tommy said, taking off his sunglasses to show he was not blind, then quickly putting them back on. Looking at Tommy's eye sockets, Thea nearly spit out the coffee in her mouth. His left eye had clearly been punched, and his right eyelid was swollen. Was it Laurel who hit him? Was there domestic violence in this world? Did you have a fight with Laurel? Thea asked tentatively. Fight? No. Oh, yes. Tommy was stunned at first, but then he quickly realized what Thea meant and hurriedly explained, my dad hired a master to train me. You know I want to protect Laurel, right? Tommy still had a basic sense of confidentiality. He certainly couldn't claim that his father personally trained him and fabricated a master who didn't exist. But how could Thea believe that? Star City was definitely the DC Universe's newbie village. There were only a few masters who could be considered masters. The sudden appearance of a mysterious Ms. Shiva was surprising enough. How could there be another one? Realizing that Old Ma had begun training Tommy, the plot had already deviated from its original trajectory. Thea didn't know whether to be happy or sad. Her emotions were mixed, so she had to get down to business first. When Tommy heard they were just calling a few media outlets, it seemed like a piece of cake. He'd been a playboy for so many years, never doing any serious work, but he'd made a lot of acquaintances. Regardless of personal connections, they were at least familiar faces, like the station director's son and the anchor's niece. After a few calls, they all said they were open to discussing things. Thea didn't express any gratitude for Tommy's help. Neither friendship nor blood ties were necessary. Seeing Tommy swaying back and forth, Thea quickly sent him home to rest. If he fell in the cafe, people would think he was scamming her. Do you want me to take you home? Old Ma wouldn't tell him the truth, leaving Thea at a loss for words. Only using you. No, I can handle it. Tommy stumbled to the door. Customers and cafe staff alike automatically made way for him, fearing he'd fall without a word. A kind person even held the door open, urging him to leave and not come back. Tommy walked out 2 steps and turned back, and the whole cafe was in a state of panic. Shia, you have to be careful recently. There is a dark force rising in Star City, and my father was injured by them, Tommy said to Thea in a low voice. Who hurt him again? Regardless of whether Old Ma is a good person or not, he treats her well. At least he is much better than the violent woman Ms. Shiva. When Thea heard that he was injured, she was naturally very concerned. Again, Tommy automatically ignored the previous subject and noticed this word. Could it be that his father had been injured before? Oh, I mean, where's Uncle Merlyn injured? Thea vaguely guessed something, but still wanted to confirm it. A knife wound in the ribs. It's a serious wound. The knife wound is 10 centimeters long. Oh, this old liar. Isn't this the knife that my mother cut? What dark force, what a fabrication. Tommy's behavior made it clear that Malcolm had orchestrated a self-torture scheme, or rather, a play on exploiting existing circumstances. He had concocted a mysterious force to maintain harmony between father and son, and Thea was truly impressed. She secretly criticized Malcolm's foresight, but she had wronged him. It was all a result of improvisation. He was currently trying to figure out how to continue his story. It was often like this, one lie led to another, escalating until the truth was revealed. Even though Tommy said it wasn't necessary, Thea drove him home. She'd had enough and quickly went to Malcolm to talk it all out. Even if he didn't admit it, it wouldn't be so painful. Meanwhile, Malcolm was resting his eyes. He'd been too busy lately to think about the Star City poverty eradication plan. He'd expended immense energy on raising his son. Even if he didn't achieve anything, it would be worth it just to ease the relationship between father and son. Hey, Uncle Merlyn, I heard you were injured. Is it serious? I came to check on you. A clear, familiar voice suddenly echoed in his ear, and he quickly opened his eyes. Thea, why is she here? A closer look at the playful expression on her face immediately revealed her meaning. She'd confirmed, based on her own stab wound, that Malcolm and Black Arrow were the same person. That wasn't a problem, he'd only changed his disguise out of caution. But then he saw Tommy next to him and realized his previous fabrication had been completely exposed. His victim had finally found him. With a sheepish smile, he said, Thea, long time no see. Thanks for your concern. I'm feeling better now. Thea pointed at Tommy with her chin, giving him a look that suggested, why don't you tell the truth? Everyone's here today. Malcolm had been brooding on this question for a long time. Tommy was filled with love and longing for his mother. If he knew about his infidelity, Their relationship would be completely shattered, with no hope of a continuation. He was stuck in a dilemma. He could only drag it out. In response to Thea's gaze, he could only shake his head vigorously, from an angle Tommy wasn't paying attention, to indicate no, at least not now. Despite her displeasure with him, Ligia could only maintain respect. What if he acted too aggressively and was misunderstood as someone trying to steal property? He changed the subject, sarcastically asking, "I heard you were injured by the dark forces in the city. Can you tell me more?" "Yes, father. When I asked you, you said you were injured by a woman, but you haven't given us the details yet." Tommy offered a brilliant assist. "Oh? Which woman? Please tell us more," Thea said unhappily, looking up at the sky. Malcolm had never been so embarrassed in his life. Caught between his children's words, he couldn't speak a word. He had been caught making up a lie. Now, in front of the victim, how could he continue his story? Chapter 33. Someone is making trouble. Malcolm quickly thought, it was a dark day, and I was discovered by a woman. She was wearing a long trench coat, had long black hair, and was holding a long knife. Then, Thea listened with a strange expression. Was the first half of this sentence referring to Ms. Shiva? "Dad, you're such a good talker," he said, giving Malcolm a thumbs up when Tommy wasn't looking. Malcolm was now speechless, but he had to hold it in. Fearing they would ask more awkward questions, he excused himself and sent the two men away, claiming he was dizzy. Since he wouldn't tell the truth, there was no choice but to let him. Thea said goodbye to Tommy and contacted several media outlets. Things went smoothly, thanks to the connections of Thea and Tommy's families. All the media outlets invited expressed their commitment to participating in this grand event. 3 days later, the Star City Police Department and the Quinn Group held a formal signing and donation ceremony. Naturally, Thea wouldn't be the main focus of the meeting. After all, Moira was still the CEO. She'd only briefly mentioned the previous police fund to her mother, neither of them taking it seriously, as the cost was minimal, a drop in the bucket compared to the perceived reputation it would bring. Watching her mother on stage expound on the police department's dedication and sacrifices for Star City, envisioning a beautiful future, she couldn't help but admit that Moira truly possessed a talent for politics. Her rhetoric flowed with such eloquent flourishes that it captivated everyone. She believed that if she ever entered politics, today's performance would be a great start. To avoid upstaging her mother's attention, Thea dressed casually, ditching her dreadful business suit for a girl-next-door look of t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, her long hair tied in a ponytail. Felicity sat next to Thea, who despised the political stunts but joined in the fun out of boredom, and the two of them exchanged pleasantries. From a distance, it looked like two girls were chatting about some private matters. It was a very warm and gentle scene, but if you listened carefully to their whispers, your jaw would drop. "Haven't you solved the missile problem yet? It's useless to fly fast without weapons. I'm anxious too, but it's really difficult. It takes 3 people's signatures to take out the weapons, and there's a combination lock that changes every day. It's really hard to deal with. I can hack into the combination lock and change the agreement. As an aside, your software is terrible. Don't glare at me, I'm telling the truth. You're the only one who can solve the signature problem. How about this? Let's assemble the skateboard first, and I'll go rob some gangsters. They should have hot weapons. But I'm not sure they have missiles." This was the best solution she had thought of. "That's an idea, but how are you going to deal with those gangsters?" Felicity said, making a fist-pumping motion. "They won't fight you. I can shoot arrows. Believe me, a pistol has an effective range of only 50 meters, but my arrows can reach about 100 meters, and they're silent." A female Robin Hood flying in the sky? That sounds cool. Felicity's eyes lit up at the thought of adventure, and she couldn't wait to get back to assembling it. Meanwhile, the meeting was still underway, and Moira, also keen to expand her influence, had gathered nearly every prominent figure in the city. To ensure the safety of these dignitaries, the inspector transferred all the city's police back to the station. Despite Detective Lance's objections, he ultimately acquiesced. Just as Moira was making her final remarks, signaling the dinner could proceed, the main lights in the venue flickered out, followed by a series of flickering sounds from the surrounding lights, shrouding the bustling hall in darkness. "What's going on? John, come protect me, honey, come to me, police, quick. Someone's snatching my bag." Chaos reigned all around. The scene was all too familiar, a scene seen countless times in movies and TV shows. It was definitely intentional, But Thea hadn't expected someone to be so bold as to commit a crime right under the noses of 1,500 police officers. She and Felicity had been sitting in a corner, figuring no one would attack her. She told her to be careful, closed her eyes, sensed Moira's location, and sprinted over. "Follow me," Thea said without a word, pulling her mother toward the back. But Moira was already trapped in the crowd. It was pitch black, the chaos was unbearable, and getting out wasn't easy. After struggling for a long time, she couldn't get more than 2 meters. Just as Thea was about to use force to force her way out, she sensed a figure rapidly approaching her. It seemed their target was Moira's handbag. "What a brazen thief. They stole my things right in front of us. They really don't respect me." With his left hand, he pushed Moira behind him. "Stay back, be careful." Moira, fearing retaliation from the bandits, didn't dare call her daughter's name. It must be said that she had seen a lot, and even then, her tone remained remarkably calm. Due to the chaos and difficulty determining how many enemies were approaching, Thea decided to make a quick decision and rush towards the figure. As she approached, she noticed, despite the pitch-black darkness, 2 faint flashes of red light on the man's face, invisible without a closer look. "Huh?" Thea was startled, then immediately understood. The man was wearing infrared equipment. No wonder he was finding his target so quickly. This wasn't just any thief, this was high-tech. Deeply annoyed that he had disrupted her days-long plans, she punched him in the chest. Despite his infrared equipment, the man couldn't tell who was who. He simply didn't think the figure matched the woman he had seen before, so he ignored her and grabbed her fist and pushed it to the left. But she didn't realize it was a feint, and Thea used the momentum of her push to deliver a sideways kick. She hadn't expected such a skilled fighter among the dignitaries, but after years of navigating the world, she hadn't taken Thea seriously. Using her swift footsteps, she tried to get past Thea and snatch the woman's possessions first. But how could that be possible? After several days of training with Ms. Shiva, it was hard to say how much her combat skills had improved, but Thea's perception had become highly proficient. She automatically blocked out the chaotic crowd around her and focused on the black figure. The crowd around her prevented her from using her kicks, forcing her to resort to close combat, employing various fighting techniques and punches. She didn't aim to kill the enemy, but simply to keep him engaged. When the lights came on, there would be 1,500 angry police officers waiting for her. The visitor understood this, saw Thea's intention, and knew their plan for the day might not go smoothly, but they still wanted to give it their all. No longer holding back, they prepared to unleash their full force to dispatch this troublemaker first. Chapter 34 Found a Catwoman. As the intruder took aim at Thea, the pressure on her suddenly increased. However, with her senses fully activated, every movement of her opponent was crystal clear, and blind firing was no longer an issue. She was able to fully utilize her training. Detective Lance's voice could be heard from afar. "Quickly connect to the backup power. Groups 1 and 2, get the heavy weapons. The rest of you, follow me." The intruder felt incredibly irritated upon hearing the officer's footsteps. No matter how skilled he was, he couldn't withstand the barrage of over 1,000 rifles. Even a Terminator wouldn't be able to handle it. He'd thought it was just a simple mission, a way to relax and unwind, but he found himself trapped here, unable to move a single step. Even if he wanted to run, he couldn't. The enemy was so small and thin that he couldn't tell who they were. He'd probably seen or heard of someone with such skill before. Xia was also furious. While the police officer had lost face, the event she had worked so hard to organize had also been completely ruined. How could she not be irritated? While the man on the other side was skilled, he was no match for her. Once the lights came on, even the best fighters would be useless. The two men gradually began to fight with real passion. Both were agile, fighting fast, and the situation became stalemate. Snap, the lights from the side slowly came on. Xia withdrew her attack half a second before the lights came on, standing in the crowd, trying to be a graceful bystander. She didn't want to reveal her skills. After all, in the eyes of the kidnappers, a knife might be enough to kidnap a weak young woman. But a skilled fighter would require a submachine gun. Call her playing dumb or playing it low-key, Xia was determined to maintain her image as a harmless young woman. In the dim light, Xia looked at the figure across from her. Black tights, high-heeled boots, a butterfly mask, and seductive red lips beneath her delicate nose. Is that Catwoman? Isn't she in Gotham? How did she wander into our village? As the lights gradually brightened, Catwoman realized that today's leisurely activity was about to turn into a life or death escape. She glared at Thea. Although she had blended in with the crowd and acted as if nothing had happened, she had fought with Catwoman for a long time and her body bore some marks of struggle, which was obvious to Catwoman, known for her sharp eyesight in breaking into houses and picking locks. As the footsteps drew closer and the light became clearer, Catwoman's situation became increasingly unfavorable. Thea had previously insidiously confined the fighting area to the center of the hall, but now it was surrounded by people and 10 meters from the nearest window. While the police officers weren't as skilled as the heroes, they weren't all useless. Several of the more agile and clear-headed ones were already sprinting towards Catwoman, their guns drawn as they ran. There was no other way. Catwoman's outfit stood out so clearly in the crowd of suits and dresses that anyone, unless they were mentally retarded, would know there was something wrong with her. Just as Thea whistled, ready to see how she'd fight her way through, a cylinder was thrown through the window. With a thud, it impacted the ground, sending a thick puff of white smoke shrouding the conference hall. A smoke bomb? The previously stable situation descended into chaos. Fortunately, Detective Lance, with his experience, shouted to maintain order, commanding his officers to open the windows and turn on the high-powered blowers. When they regained their sight, Catwoman, who had been trapped in the crowd, was nowhere to be seen. If you were to get away so brazenly, I'd be humiliated. Seeing several bodyguards approach her mother, Thea felt relieved and went to Felicity. She whispered, "Pull up the city surveillance and see where she's gone." "I'll catch her, it's a street ahead, about 600 meters. Felicity quickly activated the system, quickly spotting Catwoman on the camera. How long did it take her to run so far in high heels? Thea put on a headset and said, "Help me find a route she must take. I'll block her off." Without going through the main entrance, Thea opened the window and darted out. It was already around 9 in the evening, and the surroundings were dim. Thea wasn't worried about being spotted by passers-by. As for the cameras along the way, Felicity could easily disable them. Turn left, Dieter 100 meters ahead, turned right under the billboard. This was Thea and Felicity's first time working together, and it had to be said their collaboration was flawless. After 3 minutes of sprinting, Thea finally caught up with Catwoman. "Hey, are you Catwoman? Why are you in Star City?" Was she a tourist, or perhaps the simple folks of Gotham had to ask about establishing a branch in Star City, and she was also trying to buy time. She was a bit breathless from running so fast. Catwoman's face was indescribably grim as she saw her reappear. She carefully checked her memory and confirmed the girl's identity. "Thea Quinn? I never thought a rich girl could master such skills. You rich people are so confused." There was a hint of resentment in her words. Was she referring to me? Why didn't she look like her? Thea was a little confused. While this Catwoman wasn't a hero, she wasn't a villain either. Her facial features did resemble Anne Hathaway, and her initial urge for revenge faded a bit. So, appearance really does matter. It was a rare opportunity to find someone with similar skills, a perfect opportunity for a showdown, and Thea wasn't about to let her off easily. Seeing she didn't answer her question, Thea pressed on. "What's your purpose in coming to Star City?" Catwoman replied calmly, "Just passing through." "You're too nervous, little girl." It had been pitch black just now, and while she had her senses to observe, the crowd was too chaotic to perform effectively. Thea felt frustrated with the fight. "Since you won't tell the truth, let's continue." Catwoman, feeling incredibly frustrated that her reputation had been tarnished by a little girl after years of fighting in the underworld, was deeply irritated. Seeing her charge towards her, she hinted at a lesson for her elders, a lesson for her to learn from and to exercise caution in the future. 3 minutes later, the two clashed again. With Thea's vision fully restored and no distractions to her, she could unleash her full strength. Catwoman realized she had already run far enough that the police couldn't catch up, and she no longer felt the same sense of urgency she had felt before. Facing Thea's ferocious attacks, she cautiously responded, drawing on her years of combat experience. For a moment, the two engaged in a match of equals. Thea's superior perception excelled, while Catwoman's street fighting experience allowed her to utilize obstacles like trees and other obstacles to deflect attacks. For a moment, neither could quite defeat the other. As their strength wore thin, Thea gradually gained the upper hand, largely due to the fact that Catwoman was wearing high-heeled boots. Her sense of balance was truly exceptional, capable of high kicks and cartwheels in the heels. This impressed Thea greatly. Catwoman's breathing became increasingly rugged, her steps no longer as steady as before. Thea knew she was on the verge of defeat. She was still an Earthling, after all. If she could defeat him in heels, she would have failed in her own right and would have been a disservice to old Ma and Shiva's guidance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Batman is Coming. Thea knew she had to limit Catwoman's speed to defeat her. While she was considered agile, that was only on a modest level. There was always a slight gap between them, a gap that prevented Thea from exploiting her apparent advantage. She dodged a barrage of kicks from Catwoman, whose legwork, evidently meticulously practiced, included whip kicks, backspin kicks, and other acrobatic techniques. Thea struggled to counter them, wondering if she had the ability to walk smoothly in high heels. It was unrealistic. She figured she'd be lucky to maintain a normal pace in such shoes, but she wasn't going to let her kick like that. She was doomed. Finally, as Catwoman's energy was exhausted, her powerful sidekick lost its precision and was easily blocked. Seeing her vulnerable position, Thea leaped into the inner circle and delivered an elbow to her face. Seeing the ferocity of her attack, a blow to the face, with its dense nerve network, would surely cause a brief period of unconsciousness. Catwoman, at that crucial moment, exerted force from her waist and legs, leaping upward, but the fierce elbow still struck her shoulder, near the collarbone. Undeterred, Thea seized her shoulder with both hands, pushed off the ground with her right foot, bent her left knee, and unleashed a Muay Thai knee strike. Just as Catwoman was about to be incapacitated by the blow to the abdomen, a gleaming metal object flew towards Thea's right foot at breakneck speed. She wondered what it was. If she continued to push, while she could injure Catwoman, she would also undoubtedly be injured. Thea weighed the pros and cons. She was merely engaging in a sparring match, not a life or death duel. She didn't need to risk injury. She switched from the upward knee strike to a double-legged backward leap, temporarily escaping the fray. With a crisp snap, the metal object pierced the spot where Thea had stood, unhindered. She stared intently at the half-exposed metal object stuck in the concrete pavement. Its streamlined shape gave off a distinctive metallic texture in the dim light, and the exposed side bore a sharp blade. "Oh, is that a batarang?" Felicity's anxious voice rang through the headset. "Thea, be careful, it's Batman." Even without her having to tell her, Thea had seen the legendary Batman, clad in a Kevlar bodysuit, a black mask, and a deep black cape. He floated down from the sky like a flying sword. His attire and impressive appearance would have him worshipped as a deity back in the Middle Ages. He must have been putting pressure on her. The literature about him being a renowned master of the mind proved true. Where had he come from? Did he possess a cultivation technique? That was impossible. Thea carefully scanned her surroundings and, as expected, noticed something unusual overhead, though the distance was too high for her to perceive. It must be his Bat-Force. It's truly capable of ultra-low altitude flight. The fact that it's invisible to the naked eye suggests it also features advanced optical camouflage. Unlike traditional stealth fighters, which are invisible to radar but visible to the naked eye, this one is invisible to both radar and the naked eye. Very advanced. I'll have Quinn's weapons development department develop one for me. Seeing Batman float down, he positioned himself next to Catwoman, but for some reason, Catwoman took 2 steps to the side, seemingly trying to avoid him. Although Batman's face was obscured by his mask, his jaw and other features betrayed a hint of frustration. He seemed about to say something but didn't know where to begin. Catwoman, as if suddenly blinded, ignored the presence of a living being beside her and continued to stare at Thea. Huh? Even a blind man could tell there was something wrong between them. Thea's gossip flared. Felicity, watching the live broadcast, whispered her own thoughts, practically swooping over to give a thumbs up. The atmosphere was momentarily dull, and Thea spoke up, righteously. "You're Batman, right? Aren't you a hero of Gotham City? Why are you protecting this thief?" Batman was genuinely troubled. This time, he'd been flirting with Catwoman a few times before. The two had been traveling under their real identities, passing through Star City, and had a brief argument about worldviews and life. Moira had just gathered all the city's dignitaries for a press conference, and Catwoman, feeling upset and wanting everyone else to be unhappy too, changed her clothes and entered, ready to take on the challenge. Thea had ruined what she thought was a straightforward game. The fight spilled from the conference room into the street, and with Catwoman on the verge of defeat, Batman had to step in and save her. Batman didn't know how to respond to Thea's question. He'd checked Thea's profile on the Batplane, the daughter of the Quinn Enterprise, whose father and brother had died in accidents, had a clean record, and currently worked for her own company while applying to Princeton University. By all accounts, she wasn't a bad person. On the contrary, given her similar experiences to his, she hadn't fallen, hadn't given up, and had maintained such a positive and optimistic spirit, a fact that Batman, who had fallen into darkness several times, envied. When someone else achieves what he couldn't, he naturally admired them. So, for now, Batman could only pretend he didn't hear her questions and remain a quiet, handsome man. Seeing Batman playing dead, Catwoman, repeatedly provoked tonight, was losing her usual elegance and composure. She shouted, "Come and get me if you dare." Thea was stunned before she went over. They were clearly teaming up, so she decided to put her puny arms and legs aside. She had no intention of antagonizing Batman. After all, he was a leader in the Justice League, and she expected to be a hero in the future. It would be unwise to offend him. As long as she didn't have superpowers, she would automatically be assigned to Batman's side. Yes, there were factions within superheroes, similar to the conflict between Captain America and Iron Man in Marvel, and the main conflict in DC between Superman and Batman. Batman is hostile to all deviant humans. In his eyes, good or bad, all aliens and mutants must be exterminated. The only difference is that aliens are universally hostile, while those with special powers are selectively hostile. With his vast wealth and connections, acquiring superpowers might be difficult, but human enhancements are readily available. His preference for maintaining his pure Earth identity rather than accepting such enhancements reveals his philosophy. Even superior martial arts skills are useless against such a person. Unless he's completely defeated, he'll always be able to surprise you like a cockroach, popping out of nowhere. Thea decides to use the same tactics that future Prometheus used against Green Arrow. First, she'll use a powerful technique. A famous protagonist's talking trick, to seize the moral high ground. No need to outsmart the opponent, simply silence him, and victory will follow. Chapter 36. It's getting more and more lively. Thea shouted, "Tonight is the signing dinner hosted by our Quinn Group and the Star City Police Department. We developed facial recognition software specifically to combat crime and gave it away to the police department for free, and this thief ruined such a good thing." Her eyes fixed on Batman. "Do you know how many gang members are involved in organized crime in Star City? Do you know how difficult it is to crack down on them? If we could just take down 1/5 of them, the city government would have created an extra 20,000 jobs. She's ruined everything." The Star City Police Department has become a laughingstock. The efforts of 1,500 officers and the thousands of people at her Quinn Group have all gone to waste. In fact, of the so-called efforts of the thousands of Quinn Group officers, that is, the 1,500 officers that Felicity and her 3 subordinates had created, few more than 100 knew the details of what had happened. But she had to put it nicely, positioning herself as a city defender who was dedicated to the public good and sought no reward. Batman, unaware of the truth, was now in a state of embarrassment. They'd only just happened to be passing through Star City, unaware of the entire situation. Actually, knowing beforehand wouldn't have been helpful. Thea's words were 70% true, 30% false. With Felicity's methods, without a team diligently investigating day and night, the truth wouldn't be revealed. Damn it. What should he do now? Hand over the ambiguous Catwoman? He couldn't bear to do that. This wasn't Gotham, he was unfamiliar with the place, and he didn't know who to turn to for help. Besides, Catwoman had nearly taken down all the important figures in Star City's police and government circles before, causing such humiliation in his own home. He certainly wouldn't let her go easily. If someone came into Gotham to cause trouble, he'd beat the shit out of them. After much deliberation, he decided he couldn't hand her over. At worst, he could change his identity and compensate Star City. If the person refused to hand over, they'd have no choice but to fight their way out. But Bruce had never done such a shameful thing in his life. He felt incredibly guilty and didn't want to waste time talking. He gave Catwoman a look, signaling, "Let's not embarrass ourselves and just get out." Catwoman watched Batman stand there like a wooden man, neither speaking nor moving, only giving her a settled look. She understood she'd gotten into trouble today. Though greedy, she was always measured, always planning her targets beforehand. She'd done this out of sheer boredom, playing games. Now that the owner had come to her door, she felt guilty. Thea, in her t-shirt, jeans, and canvas shoes, looked like the embodiment of a sunny, righteous girl. Compared to them, the two of them looked as dark as crows. They looked like bad guys, no matter how you looked at them. She knew they were going to run. She didn't want to catch them, but simply letting them go would be too fake. She had to put on a show. "Don't run," he charged forward, naturally aiming for Catwoman. The two had fought twice before and knew each other well. Compared to Batman's 6 feet 1 inches frame, bulging muscles, and protective armor, Catwoman was clearly the easier target of the two. Batman and Thea knew they couldn't leave Star City unscathed, but seeing Thea attacking Catwoman, he wasn't sure whether to help or just watch. Watching the two women's heated exchange, his martial arts prowess could tell at a glance that they were evenly matched. If they continued at this rate, they could fight until dawn, excluding physical fatigue. "Little girl, I'm sorry." The fight was so intense that it was almost over by dawn. Batman had no choice but to join the fray, 2 against Thea. His entry immediately put Thea under immense pressure. Batman claimed to know 127 martial arts, who counted them all, but his skills were truly exceptional, mastering Muay Thai, Judo, and Sambo. Furthermore, his strength, speed, and endurance completely overwhelmed Thea. Furthermore, as Batman, his own perception was also formidable, negating Thea's previously sharp perceptions. Catwoman seemed displeased with her former lover's assistance, unconsciously slowing down her movements. Batman, unwilling to injure this righteous young woman for such a minor mishap, both men, for different reasons, held back, allowing Thea to barely hold out. Just as Thea felt she could no longer hold out, debating whether to feign unconsciousness or allow them to strike her down again, a high-pitched voice echoed from the street. "Haha, I've been watching for so long, and I can't help it. I must have a good fight today." For a woman so fond of fighting, and in Star City's inner circle, the only one who wouldn't want to be compared to her was Ms. Shiva. She wore her usual black trench coat and red vest, her long hair flowing gracefully in the evening breeze. Ms. Shiva. Batman's heart was a little broken at this time. He knew Shiva. The two had fought many times, and he had never won. As the mother of the future 3 generations of Batgirl, although they were not familiar with each other, it was definitely not possible to say that they did not know each other. Otherwise, why didn't she entrust her daughter to someone else, but to Batman? Seeing Ms. Shiva walked straight to Thea, the two beauties, one cold and the other beautiful, stood side by side and looked at the two of them. Batman and Catwoman looked at each other and knew that it was bad. They both knew Shiva's character, and today's matter could not be solved in a short time. Thea also knew that her helper had come, so she had to continue fighting. She was getting more and more proficient in fighting today. It turned out that actual combat was the best teacher. She ordered Felicity to black out all the surveillance cameras around. After fighting for a long time, it would be a big disappointment if a group of police jumped out. He exchanged a glance with Shiva and pointed at Catwoman, implying that this was his. Ms. Shiva wasn't interested in Catwoman either, so she smiled and rushed towards Batman. "Batman, our 5th duel begins." She knew Bruce's identity, but kept it to herself out of the sight of Thea. Putting aside Batman's inner devastation, this was Thea and Catwoman's 4th duel of the day. In their 3 previous encounters, Catwoman had only slightly lost, though the margin of victory wasn't significant. A life-or-death duel would be a tough call. Of course, Thea had no such intentions, she simply wanted to learn from each other. Catwoman wasn't as furious as she had initially been, and her mindset was gradually adjusting. The two of them calmly resumed their training. They both knew the outcome wasn't theirs, but the other two's. Batman's previous judgment had been spot on. They'd practiced their moves over and over again. The final battle would hinge on who had greater stamina. In the end, the two of them were too lazy to fight anymore because they really couldn't tell the winner. After fighting for such a long time, they were very tired and simply stopped and focused on watching the duel between Batman and Shiva. Chapter 37. After the noise. Batman may be somewhat disdainful of women, but years of upbringing have instilled in him a respect for them, akin to a blend of European chivalry and the ancient knights' prohibition of hitting women. His view of women is to ignore them. Talia bore him a son and then stabbed him, not just a stab, but a metal wound. He simply endured it. Catwoman betrayed him, and he forgave her, acting as if he hadn't known anything. Even Harley Quinn, in her later years, primarily used criticism and education, a stark contrast to her relentless beating of the Joker. The outcome of a duel between such a man with a touch of misophobia and Ms. Shiva is predictable. There are so many areas he shouldn't hit. The chest, for example, shouldn't be hit. The waist, too, is too sensitive. And the face? Ms. Shiva's stern face made hitting her even more of a no-no. He was confined, his martial arts skills already far inferior to Ms. Shiva's, and now the gap widened. He only managed to maintain his undefeated streak thanks to the sturdy protective suit he wore. He was eager to see what was happening with Catwoman, unaware that Felicity had hacked all the surveillance footage. He feared the police would burst out at him with all their weapons drawn. He nervously took 2 punches from Shiva and turned to look at Catwoman, ready to yell, "Hurry," but the sight nearly made him bite his tongue. Catwoman and Thea stood side by side, their arms folded, watching him calmly, the earlier brawl seemingly unremarked. They were practically watching him with their arms around each other, barely holding out their popcorn and benches. He had no idea that Felicity, behind the camera, was silently cheering him on with a snack. The 2 women's chatter drifted into his ears. Shiva's punch to the face wasn't strong enough. Did she eat? No, your perspective is wrong. That punch was a feint. The kick was the real deal. Wonderful. Beautiful. That side kick is absolutely perfect. Bruce wanted to kneel before these women. Who am I working so hard for? Who am I fighting for when I'm so full? He became increasingly certain that he would never fight a woman again. He wanted to call a ceasefire, but Ms. Shiva was enjoying herself, giving him no chance. Thea watched the 2's movements intently, their footwork and the flow of their moves. These were true martial artists. She was, at best, a martial arts practitioner, hardly even an amateur. Thea, retreat. The police will be here in a minute, Felicity said hurriedly through the headset. The police are coming. They were all fellow warriors, and Thea felt it would be inappropriate to abandon them and run off alone. She shouted into the battle circle. To be honest, none of the people present were truly heroes. Thea still had to maintain her status as a scoundrel. Catwoman and Shiva were both thieves and assassins, and Batman was also on Gotham's most wanted list. All 4 heroes were vulnerable to the light of day. They immediately stopped fighting, but it was mainly Ms. Shiva who stopped. Batman had already wanted to escape, and she felt a little unsatisfied. She curled her lips and called to Thea, "Continue training tomorrow morning?" Before she finished speaking, she had disappeared into the dense forest. Batman nodded at Thea. By this point, he knew Thea had no intention of arresting them, otherwise he would have called the police. He grabbed Catwoman's waist and fired a grappling shot into the sky. The 2 of them soared 30 meters into the air and vanished without a trace. As the sky blurred and shifted, Thea finally made out the outline of the Batplane. Its fuselage was long and narrow, with propellers positioned below each wing, perhaps the key to its vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. By the time she was ready to examine it more closely, the Batplane had completely vanished into thin air. "Oh, I must study it more carefully next time." Thea could faintly hear the sirens and quickly evacuated, following the route Felicity had provided. When Thea returned to the venue, she had assumed Catwoman's annoyance would completely ruin her plans to save face, but she hadn't expected Moira to be so effective. While the reporters and dignitaries were still around, Moira launched a crisis PR campaign. As Thea entered, she only heard the latter part. "We shouldn't be intimidated, we won't be defeated. We should join hands and fight these criminals who threaten and intimidate us. They fear us, they fear the power of our unity." Inspector Edward and I have submitted drafts to the city government and the parliament respectively. Our Quinn group will donate equipment worth $5 million to the Star City Police Department to fight criminals. Please lend a hand and help us maintain the good appearance of Star City and save our home. Finally, our Quinn group and the city government will each contribute $1 million as a reward to anyone who can provide clues about tonight's troublemakers. Media friends, please publish this news. We must resolutely crack down on their arrogance. Even if the celebrities in the audience were reluctant, they could only grit their teeth and express their willingness to donate. Even the shameless ones couldn't say, "Here, take the 50 cents and don't change it." Seeing others donating hundreds or even hundreds of thousands, they could only take the 50 cents back, sign a check to make up the difference, and then say they were very happy after signing it. They were so happy. Seeing his mother successfully resolve crises, turning bad situations into good ones, and simultaneously portraying the Quinn group as a relentless fighter, he silently applauded her political prowess. As for donating equipment, offering a bounty on wanted posters, or even donating less, who knows? After all, Thea's goal is the vast sea of stars. Whether Star City is good or not, it doesn't matter to her. It doesn't matter if she sees it or not. It doesn't matter if she doesn't. No matter how well built a city is or how strict its laws are, crime will always thrive. After numerous celebrities collected donations, the inspector gleefully announced that the revenue-generating mission for the year had been successfully completed. He hoped everyone would come back next year, but of course, he couldn't say that. He said with a heavy heart that he would catch today's criminals no matter where they are. If he couldn't, he wouldn't come to the station next year. Yes, he was transferred at the end of the year and definitely wouldn't be back next year. Watching the inspector swearing on stage, practically swearing a few grand resolutions in blood, Thea didn't bother to watch the political show. She nodded to Moira from a distance and pulled Felicity out. As the two women left, they could still hear the reporters peppering them with questions. Mrs. Quinn, can you tell us how far you've come with your cooperation with the police department? Inspector Edward, can you outline your crime targets for next year? Detective Lance, do you have anything to say about the disappearance of your youngest daughter and her eldest daughter's boyfriend? Thea heard rapid cries for help echoing from the hall, and faint shouts of stop. This reporter has never been beaten before, right? He's bringing up all sorts of issues. He's really going all in for sales. What a tough guy. Leaving the station lobby, the two of them whispered. Felicity, have you recorded everything today? Of course, but that man is so handsome. Thea, do you know his true identity? How would I know since it was our first meeting? I only know he's a man. Chapter 38 finally broken up. Over the next few days, Moira could be seen in newspapers and on the radio. One day, she'd talk about the city's future plans. The next, she'd talk about how many criminals she busted, how much ice and powder she'd confiscated. For a moment, Moira felt like Star City's rising star. Thea wasn't surprised by her mother's sudden burst of enthusiasm. Some people are born for politics, but they've been buried by reality. When the opportunity arises, they soar. In the past, many people accused President George W. Bush of having a low IQ and poor academic performance. While he certainly did, he met a third of the Yale students during his time there and could name and know their interests. It was quite remarkable, wasn't it? Many of us consider our social circle to be well connected if we know a few hundred people in real life. That was his ability. To Thea's surprise, Moira's sudden burst of political passion caused a new setback in her relationship with Walter Steele. She was so busy she barely had time for her daughter, let alone a boyfriend. Thea was supportive. While Walter was a genuinely nice guy, marrying them would essentially mean finding a cheap dad, something Thea couldn't quite accept. Just keep it as just lovers. Moira had just finished an interview with a media outlet. Although physically exhausted, she was brimming with excitement. Through this period of transition, she had clearly realized she couldn't be a successful businesswoman, or rather, she simply didn't have the talent. Some of her staff had even suggested she give up business and try politics. She wanted to get her family's perspective on her political career. Of course, she considered it 1.5. Thea was 1 and Walter was half. Thea, you've been planning all this, and now Mom's upstaged you. You won't blame me, will you? Moira whispered as they lay in bed. Young people always enjoy the spotlight, at least in Western values. How could that be? If it were me on stage, I'd have screwed up long ago. You, Mom, are at least 9/10 responsible for this situation. Indeed, Thea had only made a few phone calls and chatted with a few people, so if there was any credit, it was Felicity's. Mother and daughter embraced each other, and Moira carefully observed her expression, seeing no resentment, and breathed a sigh of relief. She had initially assumed it was just a routine meeting, never expecting such a dramatic change. She felt it would be a shame to ruin her relationship with her daughter over such a small matter. What do you think of me going into politics? I've been so comfortable and happy these past few days. It's a completely different feeling from being at the group, Moira said, looking at Thea eagerly. Great. I finally led you down this path, Thea cried out, wanting to pound the wall. Her own mother was a shrewd person, and since they saw each other every day, she was even harder to fool than Malcolm. Her efforts, coupled with a combination of chance, had finally put her on the path to politics sooner. She thought this in her heart, but couldn't say it out loud. Go ahead. I can't wait to be the mayor's daughter. Thea could only smile calmly and say, it doesn't matter. If you think politics suits you, go for it. Maybe if you become a high-ranking official, I'll be even more powerful. By the way, what about your relationship with Walter if you leave the group? If an Asian mother and daughter were to discuss the issue of stepfathers in bed, the situation would surely be awkward, but it's commonplace here. Moira had considered this before. While politicians aren't always clean, they all maintain a glamorous facade. With her husband and son now deceased, it's a perfect time to play the grieving card. If news of her remarriage suddenly broke, her reputation wouldn't be completely ruined, but it wouldn't improve much. After a moment's hesitation, she said, let's maintain the status quo. Thea understood immediately. This was the American version of severing ties with love with wisdom. This woman was truly decisive. She probably had the same mindset when she sent her husband and son to sea. She mourned for the gentle black man, Walter, for a moment. Her stepfather crisis was finally resolved. The original plot didn't yield any romantic results, but what if, at the beckoning of her little butterfly wings, they gave her a sibling? While Thea didn't discriminate against black people, she'd surely be troubled by the thought of a brown sibling. 3 siblings with 3 biological fathers and 1 biological mother, they were in a mess. Nipping such a cliché in the bud was the best way. Mother in politics, stepfather chased away, both goals accomplished, done. Kiss. Thea gave her mother a hearty kiss on the cheek. You child. Moira wasn't irritated by her sudden outburst. Instead, she patted her affectionately. Over the next few days, Moira gradually handed over the management of the group to Walter. While marriage seemed a bit uncertain at this stage, their trust was strong enough to allow him to take over the chairmanship. Walter didn't know why Moira's attitude had suddenly cooled, but he simply attributed it to his own lack of determination and sincerity, and decided to persevere. Meanwhile, Thea was also handing over her duties, having received her acceptance letter to Princeton. Unlike China, where there were no opening ceremonies or speeches from leaders, she could come and go at any time, earning enough credits to graduate. He handed all software department duties to Felicity and reported to the group for her replacement. Felicity was furious when she heard she was expected to develop the facial recognition software from version 1.0 to version 6.0 herself. She refused such a boring and uninspiring job. Since the Quinn family had plenty of money, they probably didn't mind spending a few more. On her first day, she hired 30 employees for the software department, promoting all 3 of her former subordinates to lead 10 people each. They could just work on it. Thea's skateboard was in the final stages of commissioning, and she was determined to finish the job before leaving Star City and make a killing. There was no other way, she was desperately broke. This technological weapon was too expensive. Her pocket money had been spent a long time ago. If Felicity hadn't seen how embarrassed she was and helped her with meals from time to time, she would have starved to death. Thea, why do you call it the Red Arrow skateboard? What do you think of the Green Arrow skateboard? The 2 girls finally argued over the issue of what color to spray. Red is so good. Isn't enthusiasm, sunshine and cheerfulness all red? Thea thought that green should be left to her brother. Felicity held a pen in her mouth, frowned and said vaguely, isn't red the color of violence and blood? How do you understand this? I thought green represented decay and oldness. Chapter 39, Bad Trials and Emergencies. In the end, Thea's red design was adopted. After all, it was she who had risked her life, and Felicity deeply regretted not dyeing it green. Just when Thea thought they could immediately begin the field test phase, a serious problem arose. Felicity, please try harder. This suit is too tight. Thea, exhale. Let all the air out of your chest. Follow my commands. Inhale, exhale. Thea Quinn made a not-so-small mistake. She adopted a generic approach rather than being pragmatic. This NTG suit was originally designed for pilots. It works by using an NTG regulator to inflate the suit's airbags. The inflated airbags tighten the suit's surface, applying pressure to the entire body and protecting blood circulation. In theory, this should improve a pilot's tolerance to positive G-loads, which was more than enough for Thea's skateboard, which reached speeds of less than 400 kilometers per hour. However, the problem she had been ignoring emerged. This suit, along with the others in the group's warehouse, was designed for male pilots. Unlike traditional anti-G suits, They were all tight-fitting, leading to the aforementioned problem: Thea couldn't fit in them. Perhaps it was her growth spurt, or the excessive weight she'd consumed from daily martial arts training, or perhaps the medication Ms. Shiva had applied to her, or some other boosting ingredient, but her B rank was advancing towards C rank at an alarming rate. After a tremendous effort, the two women finally managed to pull the suits on, only to discover that the back was barely fastened. Due to a well-known bulge in the front, the suit was too short, exposing her beautiful midriff. While this would certainly be a beautiful look for a fashion show or a banquet, revealing her midriff while flying on a skateboard at 400 kilometers per hour wasn't a good idea. Thea felt that after about 20 kilometers, this female warrior would need to find a restroom. Felicity, this suit is too tight. Think of something. I can't breathe. Thea stood bolt upright, not daring to sit down. I never understood what chest tightness was before, but today I finally understood it. Felicity took a pair of small scissors and pointed at Thea's chest in a mischievous way. Let me cut 2 holes for you? To breathe? Is this a joke from some shameful play? Felicity used to be so innocent and kind. How did she become like this now? Give her back. I sternly rejected her suggestion, but seeing how happy she was laughing, who knows what weird ideas she was thinking of. She took off this shameful anti-G suit, panting, and sat at the computer desk in her underwear. What was there to be afraid of? We were all women anyway, even though the woman next to her was a slut. Thea was really unbearable with the heat. This suit was not breathable. She called a few people in the Weapons Research and Development Department, and lied that she had a friend who was a female pilot, and asked them to speed up the production of an anti-G suit for a female pilots according to the original specifications, and specifically asked for enhanced breathability. The staff member on the other end of the line was so bored they were counting ants. Upon hearing the order from the group's daughter, they immediately pledged their full support and promised to receive the clothes in 3 days. After hanging up the phone, Thea pondered how to report the incident while pulling Felicity, whose makeup was smudged from her smile, out of the secret base. Hey, Thea. Thea turned to see Laurel, dressed in a professional suit, calling her. Why was she here? Her relationship with her wasn't particularly close, and they had nothing to do with each other. What could she possibly want? Hey, long time no see. Who are you talking to? Laurel didn't respond directly, but instead glanced around. You guys chat, I'll go check on the new guy in the software department. Felicity, though a bit of a joker in private, still knew how to say polite things. She gave Laurel a smile and gracefully left the office. Thea, you have to see this. It's a new case from the United Innovation Association. Laurel handed Thea a thick stack of documents. The United Innovation Association is her current workplace. Outsiders might mistake the name for some high-tech organization, or even think of the Sky Eye or the Illuminati. But that's all over the place. It's a law firm run by a group of fresh-faced new lawyers, newly licensed. Aside from a name that'd scare the crap out of aliens, they're practically devoid of connections and talent. If it weren't for Tommy's occasional fundraising events, they'd have collapsed long ago. Thea's mind is preoccupied with the anti-G-force suits. If someone else had approached her, she wouldn't have paid attention. She's too preoccupied with her own affairs, lacking the desire to punish evil and promote good, nor the desire to champion justice. Strictly speaking, she's a neutral figure, playing second fiddle to the good side. But Laurel isn't an outsider. Whether it's Oliver or Tommy, she's her sister-in-law. Thea has to give her the benefit of the doubt. She takes the document and begins to read it quickly. The client's name is Derek Leston. The photo showed a middle-aged man with graying hair, no scars or tattoos. He seemed like an ordinary person, with a normal family of 2 children, living in a rented apartment. Not seeing anything wrong, she turned to the second page. Huh? Thea studied it intently for a full 10 minutes before finally letting out a sigh of relief. She finally understood why Laurel had come to see her. This man, Derek Leston, was actually an employee of the Quinn Corporation. Coincidentally, his previous workplace was where Thea was now based. Derek had worked at the Quinn Steel Mill, formerly the software department, for 15 years, serving as a foreman. However, due to the prevailing climate in Star City, the company closed the mill in 2007, leaving Derek and all 1,500 employees unemployed. This wouldn't have been a big deal. Unemployment was a daily occurrence, and even Superman couldn't keep up. But the problem was that, for some unknown reason, the Quinn Corporation had exploited a loophole in the union contract, denying the workers any severance pay or pension. This is so unethical, the wicked nature of capitalists. Does the group really care about such a small sum? No wonder Oliver believes the group itself is part of the crime, having watched the Quinn group fall. Thea rubbed her head and looked at the severance date. It looked like it was signed by Robert Sr. before he left for sea. She wanted to avoid taking the blame, but could she escape? Nodding in gratitude, Thea understood that her showing her the document wasn't a way to just let this matter go. Like many superheroines, Laurel was incorrigible, relying on her boyfriend's power to commit various acts of treason. Call them childish or naive, they all possessed an intimidating sense of justice. She'd told her about this ahead of time, certainly not to bury the plaintiff in a concrete pillar, but to quickly address the matter and give the workers an explanation. If this were to become public, it would be a significant blow to the Quinn group's image and her mother's political career. While her mother could have made this man disappear, her conscience wouldn't allow her to do such a drastic act. Chapter 40 How to Solve It? Thanking her future sister-in-law Laurel for the advance warning, Thea hurried to find her client, Derek, according to the address. She didn't even dare call Felicity. Though she was a backup, she was also one of the heroines with a strong sense of justice. It was inevitable that she didn't know. Following the address provided on the documents, she found herself at Derek's house, a small one, dotted with several other families. When Thea arrived, she saw a group of people gathered at the door, talking to several people inside. The men outside, all with tattoos on their arms, had stern expressions. The leader, a young man in a suit, said with a forced smile, "Mr. Derek, if you don't pay your mortgage on time, we'll have to take compulsory action. I'm sure you don't want to see that." The men inside remained silent, forming a silent protest. Led by Derek, the leader, they formed a human barrier to prevent the group from entering their house. Several neighbors also opened their doors to support him. "Mr. Derek, we support you. Hold on, we'll find a job." The debt collector sneered and pointed a finger at Derek. "I'll give you 3 more days. If you don't vacate the house by then, Mr. Frank Pottinger will be furious." He glanced around, and the neighbors who met his gaze lowered their heads. HMPH, the young man walked away with a few burly men. This seemed like a big deal. Frank Pottinger, publicly a businessman specializing in construction, was secretly the boss of the city's mafia and a prominent figure among Italian families. I remember that he later killed his daughter's fiancé, and his daughter was desperate to kill him. I think that woman also had sex with Oliver. What was her name? I can't remember it, I just remember she was pretty. I don't know if this happened. I'll have to ask Felicity to check it out later. Seeing the crowd gradually dissipate, Thea approached the door. "Mr. Derek Leston, can I have a moment?" Derek, a middle-aged man, was trying to figure out where to get the money. Seeing the young woman suddenly approach him, his first thought was another debt collector, but he quickly realized it wasn't the case and said in a deep voice, "What's going on?" Thea had deliberately dressed in a business dress and, to appear older, even wore glasses. She didn't bother shaking hands with the man, but simply handed him her business card. "Thea Quinn? From the Quinn Group? What are you doing here?" Derek's tone shifted from initial confusion to fierceness. "Do you want me to talk here, or do we want to talk somewhere else?" Thea gestured around. Seeing the situation wasn't over yet, several neighbors popped their heads out again, seemingly eager to watch the fun without regard for nationality. Derek surveyed the faces of the people around him. He knew his own business. It seemed everyone knew about his intention to sue the Quinn Group. The group's daughter had come personally to negotiate, and many of the conditions couldn't be raised publicly. "Come with me," he led Thea to an outdoor cafe, where they sat down under an umbrella. "Miss Quinn, just say whatever you want to say. I've read the group's annual report. The group's handling of some matters was indeed excessive." "I apologize." Thea couldn't bring herself to reveal Laurel's story. Whether he believed it or not, that was the explanation. "The group will reassign you within 3 days. If you still want to be a foreman, you can, but it'll be in another city. You know, there are almost no factories in Star City anymore." Thea was eager to relocate this living bomb as far away as possible. Judging by the neighbors' outcry, he had some popularity among the workers. If he started a riot, the Quinn Group would be in a difficult position. It meant they lacked authority. Otherwise, they could use a factory director as bait and attack them all the way to Russia. "If you don't want to work, we'll issue you your severance pay and pension. Regardless of your final choice, We'll pay you compensation as a token of the group's apology. Do you have any questions? Thea said nothing, wanting to resolve the matter quickly and decisively. Derek lowered his head and thought. Should he work or take severance pay? Of course he wanted work, since severance pay was just a few bucks. And there was a compensation payment anyway. But once he took it, he'd have to shut up completely. He still had some sense, though. He hadn't agreed rashly. He wasn't just thinking about himself, but also about his co-workers. Miss Quinn, excuse me, is this directed at me personally, or is it directed at the entire group? His demeanor changed noticeably when he heard about the prospect of resuming work. Thea chuckled to herself at his practicality. His question also troubled her. She could manage 1 or 2 people herself, but 1,500 was definitely not an option. She'd have to go back to Moira for a consultation. But she still had to say, it's for everyone. If Mr. Derek is interested in current affairs, he'll get the news within a few days. Derek immediately declared that he had no problem. He said the Quinn group had always been incredibly kind to him, and he would definitely join the group again and make a difference. Thea nodded in acknowledgement of his loyalty, told him to wait for further notice, and left the cafe. Neither of them mentioned suing until the matter was finalized. Returning to the group's headquarters, Thea approached the CEO's office and used her senses to investigate, wondering if her mother and Walter were playing some old-fashioned game. It would be embarrassing to witness it. The results revealed both were decent people, proving that learning more is beneficial. After knocking on the door and waiting for a few seconds, Thea entered the office. Walter's grin stretched to the back of his head, and Thea knew that while the two hadn't done anything, they were definitely not discussing work either. Ahem, they all knew each other well, so Thea didn't bother with the formalities and simply laid out the whole story. When Thea heard someone was suing the group, she noticed a stern glint in Moira's eyes, but when she heard there were over 1,500 of them, her eyes became filled with hesitation. Yes, 1 or 2 are easy to deal with, but 1,500 would take forever even with a submachine gun. And these are humans, not pigs. They can run and hide. If 1 or 2 escape and report it to the media, it would be a real mess. Of course, that doesn't mean violence can't solve the problem. If it's as powerful as Darkseid or Thanos, requiring 40 heroes to work together, that's certainly possible, but right now, we can only use relatively fair means. Thea kept thinking about this problem. Resolving it beautifully and perfectly is the most important task of the group. Derek might be easy to fool today, but what if Derek pops up tomorrow? Moira also desperately needs political support. 1,500 jobs, interconnected and mutually influential, can provide her with at least half a block's worth of votes, which is crucial for her, given her shallow political foundation. Chapter 41 Problem Solving and New Training. Seeing that neither mother nor daughter spoke, Walter flipped through his records. Given the group's current revenue, we can only employ around 300 people. Any more would place a significant burden on the group. 300? That number was a bit low. Thea planned to find jobs for at least half of the staff, and the remaining staff could be given a minimum living allowance to gradually absorb the staff. Moira was also skeptical. Too few positions would only escalate the situation. What if they were transferred to a branch office out of town? The black man calculated. The maximum number cannot exceed 200. Any more would create conflicts with the local staff. Our group cannot interfere too much with branch office personnel changes. That's the interesting thing about America. Many people assume that Chinese people find it hard to leave their homeland, but foreigners share this problem. The United States also covers 9.6 million square kilometers. Does that number sound familiar? It's a vast landmass with a small population. Many people live their entire lives in small towns, born and dying there. It's a very isolated environment, with no one leaving or coming in. In horror movies, a cultist commits a horrific act, remaining oblivious for 20 years until the handsome and beautiful protagonists arrive on a budget and discover the ultimate conspiracy. This isolated environment fosters local hostility towards outsiders. To address this, both Quinn Group and Wayne Enterprises tacitly accept local management when appointing and dismissing branch personnel. Thea suddenly recalled the famous words of a great leader. What do you think of building a high-speed railway connecting several cities? America's east-west railways have been built for over a century. Daily wear and tear, coupled with the relentless destruction of the railway by ruthless villains, have left the surface lines in disrepair. This would reopen Quinn Group's steel-making project, not only absorbing the remaining 1,000 or so people, but also consuming more than half of them. It would also boost Star City's economy, significantly benefiting Moira's campaign next year. That's a great idea, Moira thought, purely for her own benefit. I'll just shout slogans. If you elect me, I'll continue investing. If not, I won't lose anything. Railway construction isn't a 1 or 2 day task, or even a 1 or 2 year one. It'll take a very long time, and voters won't criticize you for not completing the line in a week. And now that you have a platform, you can bring it up in every speech, saving you the hassle of racking your brains for words. It's also easy to implement. Since you know so many people, the initial investment can basically be covered with a little bit of each. The more you think about it, the better it seems. Walter wasn't thrilled with the idea, but seeing that both mother and daughter were impressed, he didn't object. You're willing to pay, so I don't want to get involved. Thea instructed her mother to send someone to sign Derek's agreement as soon as possible. The rest of the process was none of her business. Moira was eyeing the mayoral seat. Although she hadn't officially filed her candidacy, she had already assembled a large campaign team, recruiting elite talent from all walks of life. She could handle all the liaisons with surrounding cities and major companies. Free from any burdens, Thea returned to her life of idleness. She'd already watched the Catwoman and Batman videos 3 times. Batman's moves were all about power and weight, which didn't suit her. Catwoman's street fighting, on the other hand, was quite inspiring. She was completely impressed by her balance. She knew she couldn't wear flat shoes to parties anymore. She needed to learn how to wear high heels without hindering her combat skills. Deciding to start with the easy part and then move on to the difficult part, she didn't dare try stilettos right away. Instead, she put on a pair of chunky boots. She walked fine, but when she tried to kick, bang! The next day, in the middle school entrance exam class, she approached Ms. Shiva, the knowledgeable one, and posed her question, "Why is Catwoman so balanced, Catwoman?" "Humph, you defeated opponent, stand up straight and let me see." Ms. Shiva didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked her to stand straight while she circled around to examine her. Thea was a little nervous because she wasn't just circling around, but also patting herself here and pinching her there. She'd just been groping around for a long time, just below her neck and above her lower abdomen, nearly making her cry out. While she was lost in thought, Shiva suddenly slapped her butt from behind. Ouch! Thea couldn't hold it in any longer. She looked at her, her face flushed. "If you don't give me an explanation, I'll fight you even if I can't beat you. Your sense of balance isn't bad, it's just that you're using your muscles irrationally, or unscientifically, and your whole body's strength isn't fully integrated." He patted Thea's butt again. "For example, this area is the source of your whole body's strength, connecting the upper and lower parts. The movement of your legs and the power of your upper body all pass through here. You don't seem to have systematically learned the techniques of exerting force before." Yes, your random touching wouldn't be enough for old Marco. It's true that in ancient times, male masters taught male apprentices, and female masters taught female apprentices. Ms. Shiva continued to speak seriously, and Thea also became serious. Of course, it was best to ignore her blushing face. Back to the original question. How do you exert force like Catwoman? Just do this. She pointed at several areas on her hips and legs. As long as you can flexibly use these muscles, you can fight even on stilts, not to mention high heels. But only for short bursts. Prolonged periods can damage your calf muscles and Achilles tendon. Let me show you. Ms. Shiva removed her coat and allowed Thea to place her hand on her thigh, feeling the muscles in motion. Cool, was Thea's first feeling upon touching her thigh. Perhaps she was truly Asian. Her skin was incredibly delicate and smooth, and with years of exercise, a rhythmic pulsation emanated from it. This was a rare opportunity. She cast aside all distractions and concentrated on feeling this unique charm. After trying it herself a few times, Thea discovered it was easier said than done. Without guidance, she might never fully grasp it, and even with guidance, it was a subtle change. But she also understood that this abnormal muscle movement was extremely taxing, both physically and mentally. No wonder Catwoman was exhausted after fighting with me twice. I was wondering at the time why she looked like a big foreign horse who sneaked into houses and picked locks every day, but her physical strength was not as good as mine, a half-homebody. It turned out that this was the problem. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Red Arrow Skateboard version 0.7. The two resumed their daily teaching. Thea had now entered the fourth stage of perceptual learning, the final stage Ms. Shiva had dubbed earth listening. This stage was rather vague, requiring the ability to sense the movements of insects in the soil. This was incredibly challenging for Thea. Some insects were no bigger than a sesame seed. What could they possibly sense? Ms. Shiva had no good solution. She herself said she could manage it, but teaching others was difficult. Her method involved finding a precipice, clinging to the rocks with one hand, and hoisting her entire body into the air, disregarding life and death, and abandoning all distractions. Such a crazy method, Thea thought, was worth just a listen. She still wanted to live a few more years. She also recalled the recent selfies on social media of people dangling from cliffs or skyscrapers. They must have been inspired by you, right? You're the originator of the Little Foreigner series. Thea decided to stick with healthy, scientific methods. Heart-pounding exercises weren't for her, so sitting on the ground was fine. If one day didn't work, 10 would. She was still young, so there was no rush. Moira acted quickly. Just one day after Thea spoke with her, a freshly prepared announcement reached the desks of major media outlets and radio stations. She had already contacted the city governments of Central City and Midway, revealing plans for a high-speed rail line between the cities. She also hinted that she had already contacted some enthusiastic business people to generously contribute funds, and that a nominal contribution from both governments would be sufficient. Neither government had any reason to object to such a good initiative, and both expressed support for Moira's strong sense of social responsibility. The implication was that as long as they could raise the funds, they would support her campaign. Whether this was Moira's own idea or a strategy of her advisors, bundling her candidacy was politically savvy. It sent voters the message, if you vote for me, I'll have a job. If you don't, bye. You can choose whoever you want. In fact, merging campaigns and employment is not a new tactic. Many have done it, but some have succeeded, others have failed. The losers have their own reasons, while the winners all share one prerequisite, money. Malcolm, between tutoring Tommy, had also paid some attention to the matter. He hadn't expected his old lover to be so enthusiastic. While the increased income for the poor displeased him, it also provided him with an opportunity to infiltrate Central City and Wedme City. Overall, he was supportive, as his vast underground organization was board. He didn't know what he had envisioned, but the vast organization he had built had members from all walks of life, from business stars like Moira, politicians, and police chiefs to sailors, powder sellers, and even street vendors like Leo Miller selling submachine guns. There were so many members that their diaries were overflowing. A conservative estimate would put the number at several hundred. His organization was arguably the least dynamic in the multiverse. After its establishment, he didn't send out two-person teams to carry out demolition work like the Akatsuki. His reasoning was that they would take action once Unitech Industries' seismic device was ready. Whether it was due to his naivety or his foresight, he had kept these people inactive for 5 years. Living a life of idleness and waiting for death. He was currently waiting in a wait-and-see mood, and just then, he'd received Moira's news. He'd decided to send a few of his troublemakers out to explore the situation. If all went well, they could capture 2 cities. If not, it would eliminate the instability within his ranks. With Moira's strong campaign and Malcolm's covert support, less than 4 hours after her announcement, one of the 3 candidates had withdrawn from the race and urged supporters to fully support Ms. Quinn. Thea was watching TV at Felicity's house, watching her mother tearfully expound on the dangers of various modes of transportation besides high-speed rail. Planes? So many hijackers have crashed into buildings, and super-fast planes kept flying by. How dare you take them? Boats? Moira presented facts and reasoned, drawing on her own experiences, tearfully expounding on the 108 unsafe factors of maritime transportation, as if Robert and Oliver were sailing on a raft instead of a family cruise ship. In short, if you want safety and a job, vote for me. The audience, perhaps her agents, burst into applause after Moira finished her speech, as if they had heard some divinely inspired remark. For a moment, the atmosphere was as lively as the New Year's Eve. The camera zoomed in on a few burly men with thick necks and large heads, each of them tearful and speechless with emotion. Perhaps they were afraid to speak, or perhaps they had nothing to say. Thea looked at them like protection rackets. One of them, with his thick face, looked particularly familiar. Could he be the owner of the bar she frequented? Felicity had always disliked Moira. She watched her speak on stage, her eyes tilted and her lips curled in disdain. Thea couldn't understand why these two seemed so out of place. They should have had much in common, so why did they seem so out of place? In the original story, Felicity was Oliver's girlfriend, and she had even gently mocked him at Moira's funeral, giving him no respect. Perhaps it was just a matter of incompatibility. "Your G-suit has arrived," Felicity said lazily after putting down the phone. "Oh my God. It's finally here. Proof that the Europeans and Americans are full of lies, nothing to show for it. They promised it would be ready in 3 days, but it took me 10. They really don't take me seriously." Thea silently noted those people in her little black notebook, and when she came to power, she would send them to the Siberian coal mines to experience life. While these guys might not be very good, their craftsmanship is quite good. To increase breathability, they changed it to have 2 layers, the inner layer, upper and lower, joined in the middle. The outer layer remains the same, but is much looser. It's not as tight-fitting as before, where breasts are clearly visible, and it allows for some gender confusion, which is great. The brainwave collection device has been completely transformed. Both women thought the previous round helmet was too stupid and ugly, so they dismantled it into pieces to create the current one. The design resembles the halo of Galadriel, the elven queen from The Lord of the Rings. While they're fantasy versions, ours is sci-fi. They use a mithril chain to hold 5 gemstones, while we use a polymer to hold several action modules. They gleam with gold, but from a distance, they look similar. These action modules took Felicity immense effort. Writing the code alone cost her 2 keyboards, and she claims she lost 3 pounds. The action modules primarily collect Thea's brainwaves and transmit commands back through the white matter within her brain cells to control the entire flying board. However, the connectivity and conductivity of human brain cells are slower than the system's transmission, placing the entire pressure on Thea. This gave her 2 days of headaches, a real headache, like a log stuck in her head. It took 2 days of confusion to recover. After trying many methods, they concluded that machines are indeed smarter than humans, and even Thea 2.0 couldn't handle it. They had to artificially reduce the system's output frequency to maintain a level comparable to that of the human brain. One downside of downscaling is that the entire skateboard's controllability and responsiveness have slowed down. Maneuvers like dodges and pull-offs, originally designed to be executed with a single thought, now require manual and machine adjustments. Even though Felicity added a fuzzy algorithm module, overall performance has inevitably dropped by 30%. If the original Marvel Green Goblin skateboard is considered the official 1.0 version, Thea's patchwork creation would only be considered the 0.7 beta. Fortunately, she's only using this as a practice piece and isn't planning on practicing any fancy flying techniques. Its current performance is more than enough for robbing a few gangs or simply robbing the rich to help the poor. Chapter 43 Test Flight. The original skateboard has undergone 3 major revisions, leaving it completely different from its original form. Dr. Hoffman wouldn't have been able to tell it was his creation. The original flat shape has been changed to a V-shaped one, larger in the front and smaller in the back, with the operator positioned in the front. When in flight, a bracket pops out from the body, securing the pilot's legs and waist, theoretically allowing for some impressive maneuvers. The Green Goblin, a man with enhanced agility, relies primarily on his own agility to operate the skateboard, performing a variety of acrobatic maneuvers. Initially, he may have been forced into this by Spider-Man, but it's become second nature, and he occasionally demonstrates maneuvers like separating the skateboard from the human body. This, Thea thought, was too dangerous, like bungee jumping. She could easily fall to her death if her eyesight blurred and she missed her landing spot. As a normal person, Thea valued her life, and custom-made the brackets, determined to stay on the skateboard and never give up. While this limited lower body mobility, safety was paramount. The skateboard's base is composed of distributed chromium magnets. When the main control is activated, a repulsive force is generated downwards, opposing the Earth's magnetic field, causing the entire device to levitate. As the repulsive force increases, it can reach altitudes exceeding 1 kilometer. Adjusting the direction of the repulsive force allows for long-distance flight, utilizing magnetic force throughout the entire process, ensuring safe, pollution-free, and extremely low energy consumption. Of course, If the Earth's magnetic field were ever to disappear, Thea would undoubtedly fall from the sky, and then she'd be damned. As for her weapons system, Thea claims her recurve bow can travel at 300 feet per second, or 91 meters per second, with an effective range of approximately 150 meters and a maximum firing rate of 30 arrows per minute. While high-tech weapons are essential, the two are currently broke, so they'll stick with bows and arrows. They're low-carbon, environmentally friendly, and quiet, and they certainly have their advantages. Late that night, the two of them went outside. Thea donned her G-suit, got into the driver's seat, and, suppressing her excitement, silently chanted "Start" under Felicity's expectant gaze. The entire skateboard rose silently and smoothly into the air. Yet, Thea waved her fist at Felicity, a success. "Thea, the monitoring shows your blood pressure and pulse are stable, but your heartbeat is a bit fast. It's probably because you're too excited. The initial test is complete, let's measure some other data." Felicity held a tablet that continuously fed back the operator's various health data. The two of them first tested the hoverboard's altitude. Unsure how many radar stations there were in the city, the skateboard could be coated with invisible coating, but Thea, a living being, had nowhere to hide. While theoretically capable of reaching 1,000 meters, they stopped at 100 meters out of fear of causing trouble. 100 meters was actually plenty high enough. A building is only 3 meters high, which is equivalent to the height of a 33-story building, more than enough for fighting crime in the city. Next, they wanted to test the skateboard's maximum speed. "Speed up, Thea, 80 miles per hour, no noticeable discomfort. Speed up again, 150 miles per hour. Feeling good, 220 mph, blood flow is improving, heart rate is relatively stable, 300 mph. Thea, stop. Stop speeding, your body is nearing the danger line." Since there was no need to risk her life even at the limit, Thea slowly came to a stop. It seemed that around 300 miles per hour was her current limit. She believed that with improved fitness and increased training intensity, there would be room for improvement. It was so refreshing, this rush of speed, whizzing through the breeze, with nothing in mind, no calculations, no worries. No wonder so many people love speed racing, it's such a pure pleasure. They hovered halfway around the city, 50 meters below, preparing to take Felicity for a slow flight. Unexpectedly, the girl was afraid of heights, which made Thea laugh. Now came the period of chivalry for them, and robbery for the villains. Thea put on a red leather jacket over her G-suit. The G-suit was too technical, and anyone with a keen eye could easily find it on her head. She'd originally considered adding a flak jacket underneath, but the 4 layers of armor were too awful. Her slender figure looked overweight, a fact the fearful Thea couldn't tolerate. She removed the armor and added 2 fiberglass plates to her chest and back. She put her hair up, a shortcut would have been ideal, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She pulled down the hood of her jacket and looked in the mirror. It looked remarkably like Thea 1.0 from the show. Seriously, they were the same person. She didn't wear an eye patch, that was too shabby. Instead, she wore infrared goggles with bulletproof Lexan lenses. She slung her bow and arrows, her usual katana and dagger, and set off to find her prey, under Felicity's excited gaze. Despite her extensive mental preparations and numerous contingency plans, she proved overthinking. Star City at midnight was a dead city, with not a single pedestrian on the streets. Without pedestrians, robberies naturally disappeared. While robbing each other was permitted, their bosses presumably forbade it. This was Thea's current situation. With no pedestrians, robbers naturally disappeared, and the chain reaction had also eroded her goal of robbing the rich and helping the poor. Damn it, she cursed inwardly. Was all this money going to go down the drain? I should have done some market research. Just as she drew her sword and looked around, bewildered, Felicity's voice rang out, "Thea, there's activity with Frank Portinal, the man you asked me to keep an eye on last time. 3 of his men are pursuing a young man named Michael Esther. Do you want to check it out? Could this man be Helena's fiancé?" I'd come across the story of a father sending someone to kill his son-in-law. It was interesting, so I decided to go check it out. She asked into the headset, "Where's the location?" "At the intersection west of Cypress Street. The surveillance shows them driving very fast. Be careful, they're all armed. How could anyone be faster than us?" We were traveling in a straight line. She climbed 200 meters, confirmed her bearing, and broke into full speed. Soon, she saw 2 cars speeding past, one behind the other. The car behind was firing repeatedly at the one in front. The sound carried far in the still night. The thugs must be from the car behind, right? Xia concluded that Michael wasn't a psychic or a special forces soldier. He couldn't possibly be so powerful as to chase 3 people alone. She pulled a freezing arrow from her quiver, that's what she called it. The arrow contained standard liquid nitrogen, 10 times the concentration of a thermal nitrogen tank. When the liquid nitrogen vaporized, it absorbed the surrounding heat, theoretically capable of causing frostbite at temperatures above -100 degrees Celsius. She had no intention of killing anyone. The people on both sides had nothing to do with her. She was just out for a walk because she had nothing to do. If she saw someone she remembered, she would help him. If she didn't remember him, then forget it. So she aimed at the wheel hub of the car behind. Chapter 44, Saving People and Seeking Help. After calculating the lead time and estimating the wind speed and other adverse effects, the arrow shot out with a whoosh. Liquid nitrogen's cooling power was truly remarkable. While her purification skills were limited, it was no problem against these urban thieves. The arrow struck the wheel hub, and a wave of cold air instantly erupted. The wheel of the car behind her froze visibly into massive solid ice. The driver was still stomping on the accelerator to pursue the car ahead. Just as his skin nerves transmitted a chilling signal to his brain, before he could even register what had happened, he and his car were already launched into the air. Xia looked at her work with a tinge of fear. The force seemed too great. She had originally intended it to stop, but now the entire car somersaulted 6 or 7 times like a gymnast before crashing headfirst onto the road. The occupants were struggling to get out. Xia peered over, wondering if they were dead. She was about to call it a day and head home when the car ahead of her suddenly, like a drunk, thudded into a billboard. What was going on? Could there be an invisible enemy here? Thea scanned the area with infrared but found nothing unusual. Hey, did you see who attacked the car in front? Felicity, behind the headset, didn't respond immediately. She checked several cameras from different angles, slowing down the camera and looking at each one. Finally, she said uncertainly, "It looks like you were shooting arrows when a gunman hit the tire of the car in front. There was no one else near you. Such bad luck could even happen?" Thea was truly impressed by the luck of the guy in the car in front. "You've been running back and forth for 10 minutes, firing hundreds of rounds, and only the last bullet hits? Is this the legendary true warrior who must die on the charge of the final battle?" Michael, in the car in front, had also been in a traffic accident, but his injuries were much less serious than those behind him. He kicked open the car door and stumbled out. After running for 20 meters, the expected cries of "stop" and "hold" vanished completely. Confused, he mustered the courage to look back and saw another car behind him, lying upside down. Is this the car chasing me? It looked familiar, but why was half of it frozen? Michael didn't know what this meant, only that the situation seemed eerie. He wanted to keep running, but since no one was chasing him, why would he run? But staying here wasn't an option either. Just as he was torn between two options, the door of the car behind him was flung open, and a bald man crawled out, his face covered in blood. He literally crawled. From above, Thea saw one of his legs bent sideways in an unnatural way, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. It was horrible. Thea whispered, "Felicity, call them an ambulance." She glanced at Michael again, stunned. "With such a good opportunity, you still didn't run? You were actually planning to treat your enemies to a meal?" This man lacked courage and determination. He wasn't tall, imposing, or handsome. Helena, the future huntress of the birds of prey, had truly poor taste. She'd risked her life to kill her own father for a man like him, even though you only have one father and there are plenty of other men. Thea didn't bother judging other people's perspectives on life. Michael, lying on the ground, was intact, while the crawling figure was nearly unconscious. The other two in the car hadn't emerged, either from the cold or from their injuries. Infrared scans showed a slight warmth between their bodies. If they hadn't practiced a tortoise breathing technique, they'd likely be unconscious. Michael finally realized his precarious situation, grabbed a cloth bag from the car, and ran off without looking back. Thea considered robbing some of the Iron Man suit construction funds, but seeing the crawling figure's plight, she felt a pang of remorse. She decided to save the money for his medical treatment. After circling the city twice more, she encountered a 10-year-old boy selling marijuana and a homeless man robbing burgers. What kind of people were they? Each one was even poorer than the other. Angrily, Thea beat them up, then returned to base without a penny. Felicity, what should we do? Times are so tough, we don't even have enough to cover next month's expenses. Thea hated the modern corporate system. She had so much money to her name, yet every month she could only withdraw a small amount from the trust fund, never getting the main money. The liquid nitrogen looked impressive tonight, but it cost a lot of money, all the purification, compression, and sealing. It was difficult to transfer it from the group's accounts, as all the money was Thea's own personal money. No wonder those who falsified accounts in their past and present lives were all talented people. They were forced into this system. Tony Stark's public announcement as Iron Man might have been driven by the enormous costs of the Iron Suit and the unclear whereabouts of the funds, forcing him to confess after the board of directors couldn't convince him otherwise. Justin Hammer's Iron Man remote-controlled soldiers wholesale for over $100 million, so a suit so far superior to his could only be more expensive. Felicity was a homebody, so there was no good solution. The two of them could only continue their patrols tomorrow, hoping to catch anything they could. For the next few days, Thea went out every night, hoping for luck. She didn't catch any big fish, but she did catch a fair share of small ones. The charges weren't serious, and sending them to the police was a waste of taxpayers' money. She might as well give them a lesson and be done with it. She didn't know if these people were timid or if their influence was insignificant. Thea imagined her own silhouette printed on a large piece of paper, with a bounty worth billions of berries underneath. It never appeared. Star City was still the same as it was then. Was my presence so low? Thea now went out every night to perform righteous deeds. In the mornings, she trained with Ms. Shiva. At 8 o'clock, when everyone else arrived for work, she left everything to Felicity, locked the door, and went to sleep. She went out again at night. Wake up, someone's looking for you. Thea dazedly saw Felicity walk in, leading a tall woman. Who is this? She looked familiar, but she hadn't seen her before. Miss Quinn, we need your help. Thea recognized the tall woman as soon as she spoke. Wasn't that Catwoman? She wasn't wearing her signature leather jacket and eye mask, but a short skirt. Humph, I'd recognize you even without your pants, but her calves are so long. Catwoman's appearance bore a striking resemblance to Anne Hathaway in her previous life. If Ms. Silva's aura is cool and elegant, hers was elegant. Selena Kyle, you may call me Catwoman. Thea Quinn, you may call me Red Arrow. The two women, having met through a fight, shook hands to express their mutual recognition. Catwoman, Thea noticed, was not discussing the matter, but merely looking at Felicity. Was she asking her to step aside? How could that be? Thea immediately explained that this wasn't an outsider, but a teammate. Alright, let me get straight to the point. Batman's in trouble, and I need your help. Chapter 45, Getting Ready to Go. Thea looked at her calmly, motioning for her to continue. It was perfectly normal for Batman to get into trouble. It would be unusual for him to be fine. He was the American comic book version of Tang Sanzang, choosing a suicidal path and determined to endure all 99 trials and tribulations. As an ordinary man without any enhancements, relying on his muscular physique, he constantly provoked this and that. With the exception of a few aliens who hadn't returned from their permanent home planet, he had provoked almost every opponent, both good and bad. So, hearing that he was in trouble wasn't surprising at all. She looked at Catwoman expressionlessly, implying, don't stop, keep talking. He's been captured by a man named Bane, and his life or death is unknown. Bane currently controls half of Gotham City, opening Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Prison. The city is now overrun with criminals, and we desperately need your help, Catwoman said, looking at Thea earnestly. Is this the plot of Batman I? She remembered how she'd given Bruce a hard time in the movie, but this wasn't the same story. The two had known each other since childhood and had been through many hardships together. While their relationship had its ups and downs, such a deep bond wouldn't be swayed by a few threats. Realizing she couldn't follow the movie plot exactly, Thea carefully inquired, who is this Bane? I don't know. I just know he's incredibly skilled and seems to possess extraordinary strength. I heard from one of his men that he has a strength of 2 tons. I'm not sure if that's true, but he defeated Batman with his bare hands. I saw Bane break his spine myself, Catwoman said, looking slightly dejected. 2 tons, hearing that unit of weight startled Thea. Aren't we supposed to use kilograms when discussing strength? Where did this ton come from? She realized this wasn't the Bane from the movie. This guy must have been given some sort of bio-enhancing injection or some other drug, otherwise, No human could possess such immense strength. Facing Catwoman's eager gaze, she wanted to say no, but seeing Felicity's gleaming eyes fixed on her through her glasses, a mixture of encouragement and excitement, she could only force a smile. The Joker hasn't been released, has he? No, he's in special custody, but almost everyone else has escaped except him. Catwoman wanted to say, we're a simple place, and the criminals are so well behaved that they can't be driven away, but knowing no one would believe her, she had to tell the truth. Hearing that the Joker hadn't escaped, Thea breathed a sigh of relief. In the DC universe, there are 3 types of people: heroes, villains, and the Joker. This guy's fighting ability was truly average, but perhaps because his brain was overproduced with dopamine, he had no fear at all. He'd dare to stab even the DC god himself. This man's mind was so wild and unpredictable, no one knew what he was planning. In a parallel universe, he had once caused Superman to mistakenly kill his girlfriend, turning him evil. He had also kidnapped Lex Luthor, a powerful villain with a 9th-level intelligence, and ultimately destroyed Metropolis with a nuclear bomb, directly splitting the Justice League. His initial goal was simply to have some free time. Thea couldn't easily provoke such a dangerous figure. If he discovered her identity, her family would be in dire straits. She was secretly relieved to hear he was still imprisoned. She silently recalled several major Gotham villains. It seemed that aside from the incredibly powerful Bane, the rest were ordinary, or perhaps even mentally unstable, ordinary people. They couldn't be overwhelming with their equipment, but they didn't seem dangerous. Okay, we'll go with you, Thea reasoned. They probably wouldn't pay, but she couldn't go for nothing. Should she find a few wealthy, unscrupulous individuals to work with? You guys, Catwoman stared at Felicity, implying that this guy was also a hero. Felicity's intelligence instantly grasped her meaning. She angrily declared her hacking skills to be top-notch, and demonstrated a cutting-edge facial recognition and location tracking technology. This impressed Catwoman, who had never been to school and could only sneak in and pick locks. She immediately approved of her joining. Since you're not afraid of death, come on. We'll organize our team to sing you a song to welcome you to Gotham. Who are your teammates now? Have you invited anyone else? Thea couldn't quite figure out what era it was, or how many members of the Bat family had grown. Strength lies in numbers. If you could just recruit a few more powerful heroes from elsewhere, you could easily make a living. Unaware of her thoughts, Catwoman replied honestly, on our side are me, Batgirl, and Robin. I've asked Madame Shiva to find Batman. She has many connections in the dark world, and I'm sure there'll be good news, the 3 of them plus the 2 of her own. Hey, that's 5. Are they teaming up for a dungeon? Unfortunately, Catwoman, Batgirl, Robin, and herself weren't equipped to handle the enemy. They were all agility-focused heroes. Felicity was limited to logistics, cheering everyone on, being cute, and acting as a mascot. This dungeon was a disaster. It would have been nice if Lady Shiva was here. She could have taken on a cameo role as a damage absorber. But she was sent out to fetch help. You threw your best fighter out there to fetch help. I'm impressed. I wanted to say, I'll fetch them myself, and let Shiva handle the damage, but that would have been a bit of a stunt, so I forced myself to hold it in. Besides, I really didn't know where Batman was being held. In the movie, it was a deep cave, and Bruce even pulled a leap of faith, but in the real world, who knew where it was? I could only hope Shiva would find him quickly and come back to clean up the mess. I asked Catwoman how she got here, and she was told that Bane had discovered a weapons cache, and all the high-tech equipment had been taken. Without Batman's advice, she had no idea what to do. She had just hitched a ride. So, a heroine shouldn't be too dependent, she needs to be independent. She ordered the group to prepare a helicopter for her. Thea was relieved to learn that Catwoman could fly it. Gotham wasn't exactly a tourist destination, after all. Catwoman's description of the hail of gunfire had her thinking about how to con the pilot. The 2 men, unbeknownst to Catwoman, folded up their skateboards and stowed them in their backpacks. Weighing less than 20 pounds, they were a potent weapon for home and travel. Superheroes are great at this, they never question others' abilities or backgrounds. If you want to ask, you say so. If you don't, forget it. Catwoman watched the 2 packing their equipment and stood at a distance. Unsure how far this battle would go, Thea packed all her arrows. Yes, she'd decided to be a ranged damage dealer. While she was better at close combat, she felt more confident leaving such an important role to someone else. Felicity was still lost in her heroic fantasies, and it took Thea several reminders before she realized she needed to prepare as well. After 2 frantic laps, she realized she had nothing else to bring except a tablet. "Thea, should we bring some food? Thea, have you seen my charger?" Catwoman curled her lips at the news. How could a city as big as Gotham possibly lack food? Thea felt a bit embarrassed. "You're really lowering the standards of our female heroes in Star City. Don't you see how our counterparts in Gotham are laughing at you?" She quickly pulled her inside and asked her to change clothes. After all, the situation in Gotham was unclear. She still wanted to sit in front of the monitor and watch the live broadcast with chips and Coke like before. That was a bit impossible. Chapter 46, First Arrival in Gotham. Felicity had no choice but to change out of her usual short skirt and high heels. She rummaged through her closet, found a workout outfit, and put on some hiking boots. But no matter how Thea looked at it, it was clearly a worn-out outfit. It was so tacky, it must have been from 10 years ago. She wanted to get her to change into something else to bring some respect to Star City, but seeing Catwoman constantly checking the clock, she gave up. She hoped the people of Gotham, suffering so much, wouldn't be interested in the fashion trends of their sister city. The 3 of them rushed to Quinn's private helipad, laden with bags. It was mostly filled with Thea's gear. She had hundreds of arrows, hundreds of various arrowheads, and a vast array of swords, daggers, and throwing knives. Felicity also took one of the 2 pistols seized a few days ago. While Thea hadn't practiced marksmanship, with the added bonus of a bow and arrow, her shooting skills were as good as those of an average police officer, if not better. Felicity was told to protect herself and avoid shooting at her own men. "Thea, what are you doing?" Moira, upon hearing that she had so hastily commandeered a helicopter, wondered what she was going to do. Uncomfortable with her daughter's impulsive lifestyle, she hurried over from the office. "We're going to Malibu Beach," Thea said, wrapping her arms around Felicity and Catwoman's waists and smiling brightly. Felicity and Thea had been cuddling more than once, which wasn't unusual. Catwoman, however, was new to being held like this by someone of the same sex, and her waist was a bit sensitive, causing her to shiver unconsciously. She forced herself to suppress it, straining her facial nerves and giving a rather awkward smile. Moira knew Felicity, though they'd never spoken. She knew she was an employee of the group and a good friend of her daughter's. But Catwoman, who had suddenly appeared, was a newcomer. She thought that while she was beautiful and well-built, there was a hint of feraleness in her eyes, and she felt her daughter was in danger of being with her. But seeing the 3 of them standing together in a friendly manner, she didn't say anything, simply saying she'd call him to let him know she was safe. As someone who'd experienced this before, she'd noticed her daughter's unusual behavior earlier, but there was really no way to stop it. She contacted Malcolm for his opinion. Malcolm was initially a little surprised by this tendency, but then he thought it was okay. Compared to his daughter being in a man's arms, it was more acceptable for her to be with a woman. 99% of fathers in the world would be unhappy if their daughter found a boyfriend, feeling like a pig had taken advantage of their own cabbage. Some might be more upset, others less, but they're all unhappy. Like Joe West, Barry Allen's father-in-law, who constantly cares about how the couple's relationship is going and whether they've had sex. It's simply because he raised Barry from childhood and wants to keep his wealth within his family. He's not truly a good father-in-law. Malcolm's current mindset was to let things take their own course. He didn't care about the woman, but if he found the man, he'd kill him. Of course, his daughter wouldn't seek anyone out, she'd always be 18, which was the best. Thea, oblivious to her parents' uneasiness about her fate, had arranged for Catwoman to pilot the helicopter up front. "You're the one leading the way, so if they go the wrong way, I'll have less to worry about," he sat absorbed in the backseat, watching Felicity breach the Gotham Police Department's firewall. As befits a police department of a city of millions, it took a full 10 minutes for Felicity to call up the mission objectives. Thea took a quick look and saw she had quite a few targets to deal with. Scarecrow, Riddler, and Penguin had all appeared. She searched for Poison Ivy but couldn't find any information. Could it be that she hadn't entered Gotham during this time? That was good news. Without the involvement of superpowered beings, she could easily kill them all with her own skills and equipment, but she could still escape unscathed. "Get ready, we're almost there," Catwoman yelled from the cockpit. Through the helicopter window, Thea saw a distant view of Gotham. The city was gloomy, as if weighed down by a dark cloud, with occasional flashes of fire glimmering on the streets. The city's founders, it seemed, had no idea how they'd chosen their location. Thea felt the environment was awful. Using the natural perception techniques taught by Madame Shiva, she surveyed the area, finding the air permeated with a sense of impatience, old age, and decay. Catwoman had said that even without this incident, Gotham was still seeing countless deaths daily, though the exact number was unknown and uncared for. Thea couldn't help but wonder, if a necromancer arrived, without any elaborate rituals, he could easily summon millions of skeletons, perhaps even a few hundred death knights. If Star City were an ailing old man, then Gotham City was a sturdy man on the verge of death. It was hard to say which was worse. As the helicopter approached, Thea could already see the chaos on the streets and between the buildings. Everywhere she looked, she could see looting and murder. The screams of women and children lingered over the city. Elderly men were often tottering to the ground, torn apart by a few dollars. The city was slowly teetering on the brink of collapse. She felt sad that Batman's years of hard work had gone to waste. Now that she had some power, why not help these people? She didn't know if this was a heroic act, but she knew she had to do something. If she had originally just come here to get away with it, now she was determined to punish these thugs. Ideals were beautiful, but reality was harsh. Just as she was about to descend and kill her way in and out, she noticed the helicopter was circling in the sky. She snapped at Catwoman, "Why aren't you landing? Every minute you delay costs countless lives. You're so careless." Catwoman was even more frustrated than she was. "How could I not be anxious? I was so anxious I had blisters on my lips. Tell me where to land. This place is too chaotic." Before she could finish her words, some idiot fired a volley of bullets at the helicopter in the sky. How could they possibly hit it from such a high distance? Even if they did, they wouldn't have kinetic energy. Their bullets were clearly wasted. Thea looked around and saw that it was indeed quite chaotic. The weather wasn't good today. In fact, Gotham never had good weather. Who knows what kind of climate this place has? It's cloudy 300 days a year. Just as she was about to carefully search for a flat spot to land, she saw out of the corner of her eye a bald, burly man with an ordinary face rushing out, holding a bazooka. Thea was stunned. "Ouch! Pull up! Hurry!" Catwoman's reaction was also quick, and the helicopter was in good working order. At the critical moment, the rocket flew past the bottom of the helicopter. Whoa! The three of them breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 47: The current situation of Gotham. The Star City duo was genuinely unaccustomed to this kind of casual skirmishing. The locals were indeed much tougher than those in Star City. Thea had patrolled her home for 3 nights and had never seen anything as ferocious as rockets. Quickly ordering Catwoman to gain altitude, she turned and instructed Felicity, "Look for a police station or government building in Gotham for a landing spot, or perhaps a few wealthy individuals' homes." Amid the humming of propellers, Felicity focused intently on launching the first shots of her invasion of Gotham. "Oh, it seems we can't get to City Hall. Look what I noticed. This guy doesn't look like a government employee." She turned the tablet around to show Thea a 2-meter-tall bald man wearing a metal respirator and shirtless, his muscles bulging. One arm alone was as thick as Thea's waist. Thea shook her head. This guy's obviously not a friend of justice. Any government employee in such a person is about to resign. This tough guy must be Bane. Comparing their physiques, strength, and resilience, he must be the final boss, right? Perhaps. Why the word perhaps? Because Thea, assembling various sources and clues provided by Catwoman, came up with a conclusion that was unclear whether it was good or bad. The situation here was similar to the beginning of the movie, starting with Bane defeating Batman, but then the plot took a sharp turn. Here, Bane also hacked a TV station and, with a few henchmen, live broadcasted a nuclear reactor, attempting to cause widespread panic. But after 2 days, he found the city quiet. People were eating, drinking, and square dancing as usual. The imagined scene of citizens hiding under tables and shouting for the Buddha was completely absent. He had his subordinates check the network signal, and it was confirmed to be fine. The live broadcast must have been broadcast, but why was there no attention or donations? What was going on? Undeterred, Bane approached a passing elderly man to inquire about the situation. He described his prowess and the countless evil deeds he had committed, boasting extensively about his exploits. "Are you afraid?" the old man replied calmly. "Young man, you're a down-to-earth person. It's hard for such an honest person to survive in Gotham. You can't just focus on superficial things, you have to pay attention to the inner qualities. Look at me, I'm 76 years old and have had a good conduct certificate for over 60 years. I guess I'm a good person, right? Actually, I have a dirty bomb hidden in my basement and 2 bottles of sarin gas in my refrigerator. Look at this basket I'm carrying. It's 2 pounds of radioactive material I just bought this morning. Seeing how miserable you're living, how about I sell it to you at a lower price? Bane, his face filled with disbelief, then randomly surveyed a few enthusiastic citizens. The result was that none of the Gotham residents were afraid. The methods he considered terrifying were commonplace here. Do you think I was scared? This sentence, which would otherwise be considered a threat, is a question. But in Gotham, this statement is a stark truth. We were truly raised in fear. This phrase, a common occurrence in Truth or Dare, is a declarative statement. The people of Gotham are seasoned, resilient, and resolute. Casting a fear spell on a crowd in other cities would unleash chaos, but in Gotham, you'll only see the screen lit up with the words immune in large, glittering gold. In game terms, choosing Gotham as your starting place grants you a 50% bonus to dark magic resistance. Finding his 3 main acts completely ineffective, Bane turned to his new partner, Talia al Ghul, the daughter of the Ninja Master, one of Batman's romantic interests, and the mother of his son, Damian. True to her training under the Ninja Master, Talia was highly educated. She taught Bane an idiom, an ancient Chinese tactic called yi zhi, meaning to use Gothamites to intimidate Gothamites. With trepidation, Bane opened the gates of Blackgate Prison, fearing that if the chaos wasn't enough, he'd also force the hundreds of inmates from the asylum onto the streets. Facts proved the ruthlessness of this strategy. We're all Gothamites, and Gothamites won't fight their own people today. That was all nonsense. The more they attacked their own people, the more ruthless they were. The bloodbath was shed everywhere, and while the results were impressive, Bane soon found himself without work. He had already dismantled the nuclear reactor, where it had been left for days without anyone paying attention. He was terrified by the state of Gotham's people, fearing some lunatic would come and ask for a fire. While he could fight, he couldn't withstand a nuclear bomb. Now he was completely idle. His original ambition to be a leader had faded. Yesterday, a man named Penguin came to him, acting like a grandson in front of him, eager to lick his shoes, but when he wasn't paying attention, he and a few of his men stole a truckload of weapons and disappeared. There was also a guy called Scarecrow, who looked gentle and polite with glasses. But he didn't expect that this guy would stay up late at night to tell ghost stories to his men, scaring 3 of them to death and leaving 2 dumb. He fully demonstrated the definition of a city slicker and then ran away. The scene that Felicity was broadcasting live now was the originally planned final boss, who had completely become a wild monster, sitting alone in front of the city hall throwing stones. Seeing that he was having a lot of fun, Thea decided to ignore him for the time being. Then she explored a few more places. Whether it was the police station or the hospital, the central square was in a dilapidated state. There were obvious signs of firefighting outside the police station. The bodies on the ground were scattered all over the place. It was obvious that the villains had suffered heavy losses, but there were also a few police officers' bodies scattered nearby. The situation was far more serious than she'd imagined. She had no idea what to do, so she could only ask Catwoman, "Have you and Robin agreed to meet at a certain place?" "Yes, but when we passed that place just now, it was ablaze. I can't contact them right now." "You guys didn't even bother finding a few more meeting points? You didn't anticipate any emergencies and just blindly went out to get reinforcements. I'm so impressed. If it weren't for Batman's brilliant brain, you guys would be buried alive." Catwoman's complete lack of answers left Thea with no choice but to turn back and consult with her friends. Use facial recognition satellite positioning to find Commissioner Gordon. He had a strikingly large face and had dedicated 30 years to fighting for Gotham. His photos were everywhere, and compared to the masked Batgirl and Robin, he was the easiest to find. Felicity fretted for a minute. Their satellite lock is hard to crack. I need time. Chapter 48 Rescue Commissioner Gordon. In the backseat, Thea noticed Catwoman's tiny ears twitch involuntarily, knowing she'd heard Felicity. But after a minute, she still didn't react. Still trying to hide her identity? Everyone knew who, and now things were getting heated. Thea didn't bother playing guessing games with her, and gave Catwoman a meaningful look. "Tell us the Wayne Enterprise satellite control code." Catwoman hesitated for a moment before reciting a long string of letters and numbers. "Found it." Felicity, true to her Star City roots, quickly located the target with a powerful satellite assistance. With a 97% similarity, it must be him. Commissioner Gordon and 3 officers are engaged in a firefight with a group of thugs. I'm not familiar with the terrain, but it should be the intersection of 4th Avenue and Grundy Street. At least that's what your map says, the 2 outsiders said. Drive quickly, expert driver. We're not familiar with the area, so we'll have to rely on you. Catwoman quickly turned and steered the helicopter away. You'd better hurry up, one of the 3 officers has fallen. Felicity was just enjoying the fun and kept urging them. Catwoman was so anxious that she was scratching her head. Commissioner Gordon was an acquaintance she had known since childhood, and he was also the biological father of Batgirl Barbara Gordon. She couldn't stand by and watch him die, both for public and private reasons. But the helicopter's speed was limited. It was a commercial aircraft, not an attack helicopter. It also had to constantly search for ground targets and maintain a speed of 150 kilometers per hour, all thanks to Catwoman's skilled skills and quick reflexes. Another officer was injured. They're surrounded in a house. Felicity was not nervous at all. She reported the battle situation ahead in a calm voice, just like she was giving a live commentary. Thea saw that the plane's speed could no longer be increased. It seemed that she could only rely on herself to break the dangerous situation on Commissioner Gordon's side. Gordon is incredibly important to Gotham. Fair, selfless, and upright, every conceivable admiration can be applied to him. If he could cross Yamaguchi Mountain, he'd be inducted as a paladin in an instant. His death here today could truly rewrite the fate of Gotham. This guy, with his S-rated luck, courts death daily, yet every time he's in danger, Batman leaps out of the bushes to save him. But this time, if Bruce couldn't teleport, he wouldn't be able to make it. Sighing inwardly, the only person who could save him now was a mere bystander. Thea, without a second thought, began to undress for a costume change. Catwoman wondered what had happened to her, why she'd stripped so suddenly. Despite her deep concern for the situation on the front lines, she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder. What are you looking at? Focus on driving, no, flying, Thea snarled. It's all your incompetence that's causing these people to suffer. After putting on all her gear, she controlled the skateboard to float out of the cabin, leveling it with a helicopter. She carried a bag of quivers. She had only seen 7 enemies earlier, so 20 arrows would be more than enough. Putting on her hood and goggles, and telling the 2 girls to keep up, Thea leaped onto the skateboard. With her mind controlled, the flying skateboard streaked through the sky like a flash of lightning. Awesome. How did you do that? Catwoman hadn't expected them to have such a powerful weapon hidden in their backpacks. She was struck by how fast it was, like lightning. Despite the tense situation, she unconsciously brought it into her career plan. If she had such a device, who could catch her in the future? If the Master could come back alive, would she ask him to make one for her? Haha, Felicity, having participated in the skateboard's construction from start to finish, was a little disappointed that she couldn't pilot it herself due to her fear of heights, but she was still very satisfied with her accomplishment. She usually couldn't find anyone to share her sense of accomplishment with, but today, someone was interested, and they chatted about it, even without discussing core technology. Catwoman didn't understand her explanation of core technology. Although she'd been inspired by Master Bruce and had studied tirelessly for a while, determined to expand her business from jewelry theft to fine art, her foundation was far from perfect. She hadn't even finished elementary school. Felicity's talk of algorithms and formulas was merely impressive and powerful. Amidst a delightful conversation, Felicity glanced at the surveillance camera and was startled. Thea, you've overshot. Turn back, unaware that her friend was exaggerating. Thea hadn't paid attention to the road conditions on her side. Upon hearing that she'd overshot, she assumed it was her fault and sped off. The speed was so high that she didn't react, so without a word, she cut a graceful arc in the sky and headed back to the road. This time, she didn't dare fly so fast, cautiously searching for a suspected target. Fortunately, the distance wasn't far. After a few miles, she finally reached the site of a firefight. She counted the bodies, 7 on each side, 4 on the other. This seemed to be the location. In reality, she had just sped off like a gust of wind, passing right over their heads. Due to her speed, they couldn't clearly see what it was. They only vaguely saw a red shadow whirring from south to north before disappearing from view in a few seconds. The 2 groups were stunned, and there was a pause for a few seconds until the unknown figure disappeared before resuming the fight. When Thea returned, she saw the group firing from a distance. Gotham was a daily scene of conflict, and everyone, Whether police, criminals, or civilians, was hypersensitive to the sound of gunfire, each developing their own unique dodging techniques. Therefore, despite the constant gunfire, casualties on both sides were minimal. The officer Felicity had seen earlier, who appeared to be dead, had only suffered a minor shoulder injury, which didn't affect the fight. The situation was now 4-7. Commissioner Gordon was in danger, but not as much as she had expected. He had likely escaped successfully in the original storyline, but now that she was here, it wasn't appropriate to just sit back and watch. She had to do something. Just as she was debating whether to cut a Gordian knot or kill them one by one, a 300-pound burly man below noticed her floating in the sky. Perhaps having lived under Batman's shadow for years, he wasn't fazed by such high-tech equipment. With a bang, he fired a rifle into the sky. His movements hadn't been hidden from Thea, and his massive size couldn't hide it either. She had spotted this man, eager to leap out and commit suicide. She estimated the bullet's trajectory. A 10-meter difference on the x-axis and a 25-meter difference on the y-axis. Unless his bullet could turn, it couldn't possibly hide her. She used infrared glasses to examine this man, eager to reincarnate. Under the lens, he was noticeably darker than a normal person's color. While a normal person's color was a light red, this man's was a deep red. If he wasn't a fire-type mutant, then it was simply too much heat to dissipate. Thea concluded he was consuming too many calories. Judging by his size, he was a regular at the Coke and hot dog shop. She considered using a freezing arrow to cool him down, but was afraid he'd be too greasy and dirty her arrows. Every minute of her family's daily life had to be carefully calculated, so she had to recycle her arrows whenever possible. She silently calculated everyone's positions, raised her altitude, and pulled a special arrow from her quiver. Go, magnetic arrow. A dark blue arrow landed 10 meters directly in front of the villain. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49: Magnetic Arrows and Entangling Arrows. The two groups on the ground were unsure of her high-profile intentions. They stared at the arrow stuck in the road, and everyone, regardless of their background, couldn't help but wonder, is your archery just too bad? She ignored their gazes. Anyway, I'm wearing goggles, my face is completely shielded, and you don't know who I am. Amidst the bewildered stares of the police and the bandits, she flipped a switch on the bow. Buzz, a low humming sound rang out, a sound that even Shia in the sky found a bit irritating. Not to mention the people below, some covering their heads, some shaking their heads violently, and one, having previously bled profusely, was already experiencing dizziness. With a few crisp whoosh, whoosh sounds, the guns in the hands of both the police and the thugs were attracted to the arrows by the magnet's immense force. A few who were slow to react were still looking down, wondering. My gun, Commissioner Gordon, though older, was quick to react. He immediately looked up at the mysterious figure in the sky, unsure of his intentions. He had initially assumed he was an ally, but seeing the indiscriminate tactics, he became suspicious. Thea didn't have time to ponder the thoughts of her subordinates. You're weaponless anyway, and you can't hit my knees if you jump. I'm not afraid of anything. Let's get down to business first, Felicity. Our magnetic arrows seem to be a bit more powerful, I see. They're a bit bigger. The original design radius was 20 meters, but now it's 50 meters. It's probably because we added too many neodymium magnets, and the violent collisions have intensified the rotation of the neodymium particles. Can we reduce it by 25% next time? We should reduce it even more. The magnetic waves emitted by the arrows are too strong. We designed them to absorb the special metal in the barrel. Now the effect is so strong that it can be used as a sonic weapon. Okay, let's reduce it by half next time and try it again. Just as Thea was about to say something, she realized that Director Gordon was yelling at her from below, and she quickly interrupted the weapons discussion with Felicity. What's up? Someone stared with innocent eyes at the old director, whose face was serious and whose forehead was wrinkled enough to kill a fly. What are you talking about? The old director looked at her with a smirk, then pointed at the enemies on the other side. Two thugs were gnashing their teeth, struggling to remove their guns. What a novelty. The magnetic field is still working. How can your weak arms and legs compete with it? If you had that much strength, You'd be the boss long ago." The others couldn't disarm the weapons for the time being, but they couldn't figure out what they were. Those with little education were like that, but at least they had some brains. They knew to deal with the enemy first before anything else. They all rolled up their sleeves and prepared for hand-to-hand combat. This was exactly the situation Commissioner Gordon faced. He was nearing retirement, an old and frail man. There was another man next to him who had been shot and was considered disabled. On his side, there were only 2 intact men, while the other side had 7, all experienced in street fighting. The 300-pound guy in the lead might look clumsy, but he was certainly quite strong. Before, they'd been able to hold on with their guns, but now they were truly overwhelmed. He waved desperately at Thea, wanting to ask, "Are you here to help, or are you taking us on a strategic retreat?" Thea scratched the back of her head a bit sheepishly. Yes, they were fighting so well before, but she had suddenly barged in, unleashing a powerful attack without distinguishing friend from foe. Now, with her help, the situation was becoming even more unfavorable. Hey, she really wanted to help, but she just wanted to test the weapons on a whim. Tens of thousands of dollars had gone out the window with this one shot, and judging by Commissioner Gordon's scowl, he probably wouldn't reimburse her. She could only help them defeat these little monsters. As for retreating, she couldn't afford to embarrass him. Secondly, the skateboard was so small, and with 4 cops and herself, there was no room for the 5 of us. And she didn't want to let some random person get on her equipment. She felt like, since you've asked me so sincerely, I'll just be merciful and help you get rid of the enemy. Killing them all with 1 arrow would surely be satisfying, but a wholesale slaughter in front of these cops, especially old Gordon, would be a mistake. First impressions are crucial, and Green Arrow's first impression is a bad one, at least for legal professionals. He does all the work of a police officer, a judge, and a judge all at once. Those with less moral integrity fear losing their jobs, while those with better moral character consider this a desecration of the sanctity of the law. Despite his later efforts to rectify this, the bad impression lingered. He was constantly being chased by the police, the villains running in front, the heroes chasing behind, and the police chasing the heroes in the end. If he had known this would happen, why would he have done it in the first place? Superman, on the other hand, has no such problem. He makes a good initial impression, acting with integrity. Perhaps this is also due to his immense strength. Although high-ranking officials are terrified, there's no mention of the Metropolitan Police Department offering a reward or issuing a wanted order for him. So, for the sake of this good first impression, Thea abandoned the idea of performing a massacre for Commissioner Gordon. Finding a good angle, he drew his bow and arrow, aiming at the 300-pound chubby man in the lead. He murmured, "Look at this arrow. What should I call it? Let's call it the entanglement arrow. Felicity, record the data." With a whoosh, the arrow hit the ground right under the chubby man's feet. As he stared in wonder, the impact of the arrow and the ground triggered the arrow's mechanism, sending a large ball of milky white jelly soaring out. Upon contact with the air, it quickly transformed into a web 2 meters high and 5 meters wide. The chubby man was too close to realize what was happening and was caught in the web. The others, charging headfirst, were also caught off guard and bumped into it one after another. Thea's entanglement arrow was inspired by Spider-Man's spider silk. She didn't know what the original silk was made of, but she used a composite carbonine molecule developed by the Quinn group. The original creator, Dr. Hoffman, had good intentions. He designed it to deal with those who jumped from buildings. A small ball, launched out, became a large web, so resilient it could catch even an elephant falling from a building. This invention had been shelved for a long time until Thea stumbled upon it, believing it to be valuable. She secretly took it out and, along with Felicity, tinkered with it until it became what it is today. Ultimately, to save trouble, they named it Spider Silk. As for whether the spiders would protest being called Spider Silk when it contained no acid at all, Thea didn't care. The villains, of course, were not happy to be entangled in the web for all to see, and they struggled desperately, especially the fat man leading the group. Thea had made a minor modification, increasing the carbon content of the molecular material, reducing some of its hardness while increasing its toughness. The web now wobbled with the force of the entanglement, seemingly ready to break free at any moment. Actually, this design was a bit shady. It was like the illusion that he liked me and I could fight back. An elephant wouldn't be able to free itself for a while, let alone a human. She spread her hands at Commissioner Gordon, saying, "I've taken care of it. The rest is up to you. Chapter 50 Gotham University? Looking at the unknown figure before him, even though Thea covered her tightly, Commissioner Gordon could still tell she was a woman. He'd lived for over 60 years, and if he couldn't even tell a man from a woman, his life was a waste. Like Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingte, being unrecognizable after a change of clothing only meant blindness. Commissioner Gordon, though wearing large reading glasses, hadn't seen as good as it had in his youth, but he wasn't that blind. A momentary silence fell, the only sound audible above the struggling thugs. Thea made no move to show her face. Commissioner Gordon was fine knowing her true identity, her credibility was undeniable, but the same couldn't be said for the other officers. Gotham's police department was a sieve, overcrowded, so he decided to remain secretive. The old commissioner was wondering when another female hero had arrived in his jurisdiction when Catwoman's helicopter finally arrived. Catwoman and Commissioner Gordon had known each other for years, and they exchanged intel in whispers. Several officers shared the look of someone who had saved their lives, as if they had been saved by a traditional Chinese doctor. Gotham now resembled Stalingrad, with constant gunfire and the occasional violent explosion. The group was battered and maimed, their ammunition running low, and they lacked the confidence to cross the city. The arrival of the helicopter greatly increased their safety margin. Several villains had already passed out after prolonged contact with the spider silk. After all, it was a chemical product, and skin contact was somewhat damaging to the nervous system. Further research was needed to make it green and natural. Thea and Felicity stood by the web, each donning a pair of gloves, examining their work. The adhesion is pretty good, next time, we can reduce the amount we load. Such a large piece is a bit wasteful for a single target, as Thea, using special lenses, examined the cross-section of the spider silk. Commissioner Gordon and Catwoman slowly approached. Looking at the dense web, this was truly remarkable. Commissioner Gordon was always looking for ways to arrest criminals without breaking the law. Beating a prisoner to the point of being unable to care for himself was completely out of character. Every time Batman left a bloodied prisoner outside the police station, it kept the janitors and paramedics busy for hours. This spider web was a great idea. Not only did it not bleed, it didn't even scratch. It was safe and quick, and it even had a built-in stun effect, allowing officers to cuff and take him away. It protected the officers without seriously injuring the prisoner. If it weren't for the wrong timing, he'd have wanted to ask Thea how much it cost per pound. Recovering from his thoughts, he saw the two women chattering away, often incomprehensible, and could only interrupt them. "Thank you for your help in Gotham." "Oh? You're welcome." It seemed Catwoman had told him her identity. Actually, it wasn't hard to guess for the discerning eye. Didn't you see Felicity standing there, carefree and without any disguise? A quick cross-reference and search for connections would reveal who it was. But Thea didn't dwell on the question. Instead, she asked, "Where to next?" This question could only be addressed to Commissioner Gordon. After all, he was the chief of a city of millions, a department-level official at least. He was undoubtedly decisive. Which was the main reason Thea approached him first. "Some of our officers are at Gotham University. Come with me." "What kind of university is this place?" "Learning how to make C4, how to develop a new perspective on life for someone with a mental illness." Thea truly admired the influential individuals who had decided to build a university here. They were truly impressive. When it came time for the specific teams, Commissioner Gordon wanted Thea to bring 2 people, as the helicopter couldn't accommodate so many. Thea saw that the officers looked unkempt, like refugees. She had a mild case of obsessive-compulsive disorder, and with so little space on the skateboard, she worried she might overreact and kick someone off. Several officers also found her skateboard's erratic movements intimidating. The two sides agreed it was a perfect match. The women all boarded skateboards, and the men boarded helicopters. Honestly, the officers were quite skilled. 3 of the 4 could fly helicopters, making Thea wonder if she should learn some modern piloting skills. Catwoman, confident in her balance, stood on one side while Thea, holding Felicity's waist, stood on the other. The 3 of them lowered their altitude and followed the helicopter at a slow speed. No one mentioned the guys online. Thea and her team did have a special solution to get them down, but with the city in chaos, there was no place to hold them. They could only leave them hanging for now. As for whether they could manage to get down without the solution, the 2 of them had no idea. With Felicity in her arms, Thea had to use her pistol to dispatch any enemies she encountered along the way. With a helicopter rumbling by, Concealment was no longer an issue. Catwoman also demonstrated the limits of human agility, maintaining steady footing on a skateboard without any equipment, occasionally flinging and throwing knives at enemies. Finally, just before Felicity collapsed, everyone arrived at the so-called Gotham University. The university, true to its Gotham style, was gloomy and gray. A dilapidated iron fence marked the entrance. The main classroom building was brighter in color, as if the school had tried to brighten it up with more color, but the effect was minimal. Years of neglect had left the original white walls stained and muddy. A green belt flanked the campus. The trees, which should have brought life and sunshine, looked particularly eerie in the gloom. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, like the whispers of a banshee echoing through the trees. Thea felt a slight pain in her teeth. This place didn't even need repairs for a horror movie. How much money could they save by lending it to the Ring? Bury a dead body here and it'd turn into a corpse in seconds. Even the usually talkative Felicity was frightened by the eerie atmosphere and huddled back into Thea's arms like a quail. The police officers and Catwoman were not affected at all, perhaps because they have grown up in this environment and have become immune to it. This university is truly a place of outstanding people and good fortune. There is a guy who has loved to scare people since he was a child and loves to scare people even more as he grows up. Later, someone gave this professor a nickname, Scarecrow, who is the wise man in Batman who wears a mask and scares many people to pee their pants. There is also an outstanding student representative, who is both good in character and learning, and has all-round development in morality, intelligence and physical fitness. She was a young girl who won the gymnastics performance championship for the school. It is said that she almost participated in the Olympics. After graduation, she devoted herself to the most advanced research in psychology and became the admired existence of countless junior and senior students. This girl is called Harley Quinn. Of course, the school itself is innocent for cultivating so many elites. You can't say that the school is bad just because Voldemort graduated from Hogwarts. The school is a place to learn knowledge. Did the two mentioned above learn knowledge? If they did, it means it has nothing to do with this school. Batman in the future also sent his son to this school for further studies, which shows that Master Bruce still recognizes the faculty of this school. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.